Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the March Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Jordan and I'm the acting chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. As usual, we have a full agenda and it's my goal to get everyone out of here early, so be thorough but mindful of time. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during the meeting. This ensures commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you're called upon, and when you speak at the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Before commission votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Speakers are given 3 minutes to relay information to commission members. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission to see the items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, new materials may not be shared with the commission, so if you brought materials with you, please keep them at your seat. Okay, roll call.
Jordan.
Present.
Gay.
Present.
McBride.
Present.
Poole.
Present.
Whitby.
Present.
We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For the sake of time, we ask anyone who is unfamiliar with the process to please refer to the procedures section. There are 2 items we'd like to note specifically regarding the meeting process. These items involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the certificate of appropriateness is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding an appeal to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, any news from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
We did want to announce that we're going to be having a new event. We've dubbed it Office Hours. It'll be at the Belle Isle Library on Saturday, April 18th from 10 to 2. This is just a time on a weekend with convenient parking. People don't have to come downtown and take time off from work to just visit with staff. So if you have a project you're considering and you want to talk through it with staff, if you want to bring materials that you are planning on submitting or talk about what you would need to submit, this would just be a time that staff would be available to do that. So we hope people will take advantage and come see us. The other thing that is not on your agenda, but I want to introduce our new attorney, John Clark. He's new to the city and has been assigned to HP, at least for now. So welcome, John.
Okay. Have the commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the February 4th meeting? And if so, do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to accept or modify those?
I move acceptance.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Y'all can all vote in PrimeGov, please. Okay, those minutes are approved. Katie, anything from code enforcement?
Nothing in particular to report. As always, if you guys see an item in the code enforcement report and have questions, or if something's not there that you think ought to be there that you might have reported, feel free to reach out to staff or contact the Action Center.
Okay, any continuance announcements or requests?
We have no continuance announcements on the agenda and no new requests have come in since the meeting was published.
All right, public hearings. Any dilapidated structures?
No dilapidated structures, no National Register nominations. We have 4 items on the consent docket. These are items that require commission review, but that staff did not identify any issues with, and we've recommended approval on them.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve or modify the consent docket?
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we can vote in PrimeGov again. Okay, if you were on the consent docket, congratulations, your project is approved. You have the option to stick around for the remainder of the meeting or head out now. And now we will move on to the fun part, cases for individual consideration.
Jeez.
First up, we have HPCA 25-00089.
This is at 424 Northwest 27th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. This is consideration and possible action on an application by Holly Hunt, HJH Design, for Brian Blundell for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct duplex elective, 2, construct 2-story garage with apartment elective, 3, replace driveway elective, 4, install front walkways to duplex entries elective, and 5, install paving for parking in the rear yard elective. This is an item that the commission saw previously in the form of a rezoning request. We had kind of an informational presentation on the proposal itself, but the action was just to review the SPUD. The commission did recommend approval of that, and it has since been through the rest of the process to City Council and Planning Commission. So the applicant's back now with their proposal for the new design. It is essentially the same design that the commission saw previously. Staff did recommend a continuance. There are a few specific items, just some building materials that need to be further defined, confirming that the design will be able to meet the requirements for parking that are laid out in the SPUD. Parking spaces aren't shown on the site plan. That's certainly something that could be done with staff if it was otherwise to be approved. And then concerns from staff about the overall massing, scale, appropriateness of the design that are noted in the staff report. The applicant's present, but any questions for me?
Not yet. Okay, you want to state your name and address?
Sure, Holly Hunt, 5913 Northwest 82nd Circle. Yeah, I did, from the last meeting when we were just reviewing the SPUD, Commissioner Remy did make a suggestion about raising the porch, so I did go, I took that comment, and we did raise the finished floor of the front structure of the duplex, again, just to bring that porch level with the porches adjacent, as well as we removed the circle driveway, which was another comment from the commission. Of course, as part of our SPUD, the garage parking spaces do count toward our parking, and we're required 5. So you can see we get 3 in the garage. There's 1 beside the garage, and then we can certainly work with staff to show that 1 other parking space. We've got considerable amount of driveway space in the rear, so that shouldn't be an issue to get that 1 more space that's just not shown on the site plan yet. Happy to work with staff on the materials. I will say we're working with a general contractor, so his firm submitted those, and it was kind of last minute, so I had to just kick it to staff before the deadline, but I'm happy to work with staff and make sure that we get all the proper materials in that packet. So I'm happy to answer any questions. What y'all's overall feel. I felt like in our first, because we've actually reviewed this now twice, and I got a lot of positive feedback on the design. We did make some alterations, mostly just some more detailing on the main, the duplex. But again, I mean, our intent is to stick with historically appropriate materials, and we'll be sure and work with staff to do that.
When did we review it the second time?
So there was an informational presentation, and then there was the actual
Okay, sorry.
meeting where we reviewed the
Yes.
rezoning request.
Okay, got it, got it. Okay, commissioners, any immediate questions? Holly, what did you raise the porch height to?
So it's about 18 inches above grade. You can see this is a very flat lot, as well as the street. I mean, there's not, this whole street is very, very flat.
And
But
that's
again, that was
comparable-
just in response to Commissioner
Right.
Reeves.
That just, it still seems so low, but it must be the norm right there.
Well, and again, being that you can see, I'm surrounded in this district with multiple story structures, apartments, and so forth, but my 2 neighbors are these very small bungalows. So my point in keeping the building low was just not to have a giant 2-story right beside, even though, you know, it's not like it's disallowed or anything. It's just, that was just my thinking, trying to kind of meet a happy medium.
I think for me, where I'm struggling is that we are sort of referencing a historic structure, but it's almost like we've just split it in 2 and doubled it with the symmetry. So it doesn't really replicate the style of multifamily we most often see in the district. So it kind of doesn't scream multifamily to me. It almost screams like modified single family, which I think would generally be something we would like to avoid. I think, you know, just my 2 cents on like the massing and symmetry as it's currently presented.
Yeah, there are, well, there are some craftsman bungalows to be sure, but there are many different architectural styles. I mean, again, I'm trying to kind of blend in with the neighborhood, but again, it's a two-story duplex, so it is going to be a little bit different. The symmetry there, I'm thinking it would further emphasize the fact that it's a duplex by having the two entries
Yeah.
identical.
I feel like a lot of those that were built as duplexes or multifamily over there are architecturally a pretty big departure from the craftsman bungalows. You know, you see a lot of Spanish influence, a lot of brick, a lot of cast stone. So I would prefer to see a multifamily mimic existing multifamily than mimic a, you know, just an enlarged craftsman bungalow that's been kind of made duplicate. But you know, that's a design, I mean, that's just me wanting it to feel more like an existing multifamily if it's going to be a multifamily. I can see the intent totally, and we know that a craftsman was there at one time, but I think to, you know, blend in with the existing historic fabric, for me, a multifamily should replicate multifamily, again, just because this is a district with a lot of multifamily that exists.
Certainly is, yeah.
Commissioners, any thoughts on that or anything else?
I can see what you're talking about. I'm not sure. I don't know if it causes too much pause for me. There's probably other instances throughout the neighborhoods that have something similar. Sometimes you don't even realize that there's duplexes when they are duplexes, but it does seem a little odd, but I'm not too concerned with it. Holly, I think staff had some additional materials that it was requesting.
Yes.
The parking space, you kind of addressed that, and building materials.
Well, I think they had thrown in there, the general contractor included a fiberglass door, for example. Obviously, had I caught that, that would have never been submitted. I think there was some other, like smart trim rather than LP siding, things like that. Obviously, stuff we can clear up with staff, for sure. I mean, I'm happy. I mean, you can see it, brick and siding, we can certainly get there with staff on those materials.
So staff, are you able to work with Holly and make sure that they're materially compatible with our
Yes,
guidelines?
on all the materials, we can certainly work with the applicant on making sure everything meets the guidelines.
And I just want to point, sorry, in the specific findings, I mean, number 3 from staff is that the duplex is not compatible in size, scale, proportion, spacing, texture, setbacks, heights, material, color, and detail to adjacent or nearby. I mean, it says and detail, you know, and materials, and so on and so forth. It's not like an either or. So what is staff's biggest struggle? What's that finding about?
So I think one of the things that probably has the most impact is the roof forms. We've got a really steep roof pitch on the main roof of the structure, as well as on the garage and on the gables. This makes everything look taller. If you look at the comparison drawing to the houses to either side, it's on page 4 of your plan set. You know, you look at the line of the front porches on the neighboring structures, and these front porches are sitting up well above those, and they're sitting up quite a ways above the top of the door. Let me share this so it's easier to see. So, you know, the height is within what's allowed for the height. But I think because of the pitch of the roof, because of the height of those porch roofs, it makes it feel that much more massive in comparison to these really modest and really kind of horizontal houses to either side. So just tweaking some of those things, I think, would make a big difference in the compatibility, to bring the roof pitches down and bring the porch roof heights down. And then the other kind of main comment that staff had was that we've got some really big walls on the side of the house that are going to be visible from the street that have 3 windows for the, you know, entire length of the wall. So perhaps finding ways to add more openings on those side elevations, perhaps bringing those porch roofs down would give an opportunity to have some windows above the front doors on the second floor. Right now, there's only 2 windows on the entire front facade at the second floor of the house. Just doesn't seem like the typical wall-to-window ratio proportions that we see in a historic structure, and not a typical number of windows that we would expect to see in a structure of this size. So I know adding windows can affect the floor plan, that can be a challenge, but we think there's opportunity there to increase some compatibility with some changes like that.
I have a quick thought. Since here you can see I'm using rather large windows, would it help you get there a little bit if instead of one, obviously it's split down the middle, one in each of those rooms, top and bottom, if I did a pair of windows up and down, again, just helping create more lines, because to me, when I look at this, it looks compatible. Is it larger? Yes. And we can certainly lower those porches. That I can see that there's space to do that. I don't think that that's a deal breaker. But changing the pitch, maybe the roof pitch that's running north-south, because it's only 7.5 over 12. It's really not a steep roof. This is rather typical for the area. That's why I chose that pitch. But again, it's, we can lower those and add some more windows. I have no problem adding windows on the side elevations. I work a lot in Nichols Hills, and sometimes they don't like bedroom windows that overlook the neighbors. So, it's just kind of a typical duplex layout to keep the more private spaces and have your windows from your bedrooms into the rear yard. But we can add windows.
I get that goal. I'm struggling because I think it looks similar but not compatible, if that makes sense. It's certainly stylistically really similar to the bungalows on either side of it, but the scale of it makes it incompatible for me. And so while it is one, it doesn't feel like it's the other.
Well, and we talked about in one of the earlier reviews about this district specifically having such a variety of different building sizes, configurations.
It does. I just can't think of anything that's like this, though. It's like this isn't quite mimicking one or the other. It's
trying to be right in the middle, yeah.
right. It's like it took on both instead of one. Like the massing is similar to a multifamily, but the style is similar to a very tiny bungalow. I don't feel that it's compatible with the district in its current form, but I'm one of a handful.
I do think Katie's comments is probably what's making me think it's a little off, is the height. Can you tell me, is the roof line on this house that's shown, is that the same pitch as what you're proposing?
Now that I look, I don't know if
really
this windows could be a little distorted, but it does look lower now that I'm seeing this picture.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm just trying to get close without stepping on people's properties, but we can lower the pitch of the roof, guys. That's not a deal breaker. I don't know if that's something you guys can count on me to do with staff, or if that's something that we need a continuance for today. These people obviously with the rezoning, and we've been through a lot, and I'm just surprised to hear this much feedback, because it was like everybody was really for it up until now. So
I don't think we were ever at a place where we were really for it, or we would have approved it last time.
Well, this is our first time. We were only reviewing the SPUD, not the design.
Sorry,
before.
yes, we would have
So-
given it no feedback, I should say. Let's talk about the garage, though, before we get to
Yeah,
the
I was just
because-
going to say I wouldn't feel comfortable moving this forward today. So
okay, that answers my question.
Katie, do you want to talk about, the specific findings on the garage?
Yes.
So it's
More
consistent
windows.
with the SPUD, but it's maybe inconsistent with surroundings.
Yeah, I think similar to the house, it seems taller than what we typically see for a two-story garage, and I don't remember exactly what the height was. But again, it was a pretty steep roof, so I think just changing the pitch of the roof on that, if nothing else, would help with the height of the garage. We don't typically see a garage that's brick on the bottom and siding above. Usually garages are kind of all one material or the other, and I realize that matches the proposed design of the house, but it's kind of out of character for our two-story garages in our districts. I think those were the main concerns there with the garage. I think we have some kind of
So it
odd
originally-
window shapes and sizes on the garage. It is in the backyard. It's, barely going to be visible from the street, so I'm less concerned about what the windows need to be on the garage structure, but yeah.
Well, obviously, if we lowered the pitch on the main structure, no brainer, we'll lower the pitch on that garage as well. I have no problem doing the garage all out of siding. If you'll recall, one of the original drawings had all brick, and I think the staff felt that was too heavy, and that's when we went to siding, half siding, and then brick. So we've actually kind of moved in that direction. If we'd rather just go all siding on the garage, I think that that's perfectly fine. I'm not opposed to one material either. That's how I was originally.
Yeah, I think going all siding is right, because as of right now, it's 3 different materials, which is a lot for a garage. So I think if you go to all siding, lower the pitch, and, look at a couple of the window sizes and alignments, then
Yeah, that was
Pretty-
my next question, was those windows on the north, is that what you're?
Yeah, I think on the sides, on the rear,
The north
I'm not
and the south,
concerned, but
yeah.
on the front of the garage, typically we see windows on a garage that in one way or another align with the garage door. They're centered on the door or something, and these just kind of feel like the top of the building's not connected to the bottom, so.
Also 3 different sizes of windows on the garage. So I feel like we brought that up last time, is like more consistency with the sizing.
Yeah, there's a kitchen window, a kitchen sink at that smaller window. I could maybe triple it or something, but that one I won't be able to lower the sill on. Well, maybe I could redo the interior layout a little bit. I can work on that. I did remove the divided lights on that secondary structure again to just try to reduce its detailing. But certainly, we can have more windows. One thing too, this is being new construction. They're gonna throw the full building code at this. So I'm again thinking about egress on these windows, trying to get them, because a lot of times these historic windows, they don't meet current code requirements. But of course, that's something I'm happy to take that feedback and bring you a new submission on the garage as well.
On the home with the brick and the half brick, half siding, maybe that's something that's also kind of throwing me off. On the actual proposed home.
Yeah, you look at the bungalows next door on either side, and they're all siding with the exception of the brick pillars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could do something like that where you just focus that in the same way that your neighbors have. So, if you're gonna go with the Craftsman bungalow style, I feel like you need to really commit to it if that's like the direction you want to go. So I think that includes materials. I think that includes how you do your windows. Like, I think you probably need to pair them with a mole in the middle, similar to how a historic window would be set up. In any of these historic homes, it's very rare that you ever have a wall with just one single window on it, with the exception of like a bathroom or over a kitchen sink. So I think just like look a little bit more into those details to try to just tighten it up a little bit.
No problem.
That's all I got.
So we can continue to April 1st or May 6th,
Let's
which
do
is
April,
crazy.
Okay. One final note for me, I think it just kind of like dawned on me as they were all speaking. I think it's the symmetry for me that is contributing to the massing. Like if you went and looked at a larger Craftsman in Mesta or something that is a 2.5 story, they're not symmetrical like this. So it kind of just comes back to like, are we replicating or being inspired by a multifamily in this neighborhood or by a Craftsman? And you wouldn't typically see, I've never seen one that's symmetrical just like that, that's that big. But there are some great examples, obviously, of Craftsman and Mesta Heritage that are probably about that same footprint. Anybody have a motion to move this one to
Public,
April?
is there anybody from the public?
Oh, anybody from the public wish to speak to this one?
The next ones.
I will make a motion for HPCA 2500089 to be continued to the April 1st meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, time to vote. Okay, see you in April.
On the next one too.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not just lingering.
we will see you right now.
Yeah.
Okay, HPCA 25-00115.
This is at 827 Northwest 17th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, HJH Design for Taylor Volk, Clover LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct 2-story accessory structure elective, 2, construct 1-story garage elective, 3, install fence and gate elective, 4, remove, replace, and reconfigure concrete drives and sidewalks elective, and 5, request recommendation to Board of Adjustment on variance to the minimum separation between buildings. And that is based on their kind of first iteration of the design. The most recent version, they don't actually need that variance. We've just kept it in there in case we went back and forth between the two, that sort of thing. So. The commission has seen this twice previously in this round of review of this CA. The commission has seen other versions of very similar proposals at this site several times before. Between the previous meeting and this meeting, we did receive some additional presentation slides from the applicant. We didn't get any additional changes to the proposed project itself. Based on the discussion at previous meetings, based on the analysis that's there in the staff report for you all of the proposal and the guidelines, staff is recommending a denial with prejudice.
Okay, applicants present, do you mind restating your name and address?
Sure. Holly Hunt, 5913 Northwest 82nd Circle. Blah, blah. Yeah, guys, here we're back again. I know it's been difficult on all of us. It's probably especially me. But the point of these slides, and one thing I just want to reiterate is, I keep banging my head against the wall, is that this 2-story structure was never used as a garage. And I think even in this last pool of evidence, I got some more, was able to locate some more pictures. This structure, it looks nothing like a carriage house. And again, I'm not saying that we can't rebuild a garage in this location, but I do want to make it clear that this is a historic 2-story structure that was used for housing for a long, long time, decades and decades and decades, probably close to 100 years. And I think the evidence is that it has a big concrete footing and foundation, something we wouldn't typically see, not even typically, we wouldn't see that on a carriage house. Now, again, I've shown, this is why they built that 1-car garage. That's why they installed all these carports, because they didn't have a garage historically on this property. And I think that the reason why that's important is we really are trying to just replace that structure. And so if there's a priority for my client, it would be that structure. It was there when he purchased it. There's a picture in these slides where you can tell they're trying to rebuild that little back 1-story portion. That's when the repair of that foundation happened. But the rest of that foundation is the existing foundation from that 2-story structure. It's just that little odd trapezoid in the rear that was in such bad shape, probably after the demolition of the 1-car garage. So as a part of trying to rebuild that, that's when all of this happened. And the reason I'm saying that is, again, to me it seems more a departure from the historic past of this property to try to recreate a garage in this otherwise building that was servants' quarters for a century. So, if we can't get both buildings done, I think that the 2-story is the priority. And I would, if it's a denial on the garage, we can still provide parking with a parking pad there off the rear and what otherwise is the place of that footprint of the garage. And of course, I could submit that to staff. To me, a full denial when there's you'll find in the specific findings, the staff really doesn't have much issue with either of the buildings. It's the fact that they're both proposed on a single lot. And I completely understand that, as you guys know. It's not, but to deny the replacement structure outright, to me, is, I don't really see what the grounds for it is. And luckily, they are separated in the staff report. They're separate items. So I would really love it if we could work toward an approval on the two-story structure. And I can work with staff to submit new drawings that do not show the garage any longer. And instead, we can just provide parking there, a little parking pad off the rear, and that will be outside of the fence, obviously, and then the backyard will be fencing. That will help us with the elevation change that occurs from the alleyway to the backyard. So anyway, that's what I'm asking, and I really hope we can get there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Has anything changed about this proposal from last month, or last time you were here? I think it was
No,
actually 2 months
just
ago.
more support, yeah.
But the plan, like what we reviewed, so our comments, okay. So for me, if the priority is on the two-story, we need to see it without the garage. Like we've made it very clear that we're not comfortable, that nobody on this commission was comfortable with two buildings on one
None of the
site.
two-story drawings have the garage with them. It's just the site plan that would
But
change.
this submission includes both, and we've all made it abundantly clear that we are in no world.
But you've approved certain items and denied certain items, certainly.
Regarding, I mean, yes,
Well, I
broadly.
mean, you can break out different items for
Yes,
consideration.
but this is a unique case, and it's a unique property, and it's a unique, I mean, everything about this, and it's been ongoing for multiple years. And so when you come and you're on the record and you're stating that the priority is on the two-story accessory building, then bring it back like that, because we've already said we are in no world comfortable with the pursuit of two buildings on this site. And, I mean, I would not be comfortable approving the two-story accessory building as it is right now, because I don't think that it closely approximates what was there, and the whole argument about it is, hey, it was already there. And so if it was already there, then we're supposed to be putting it back as it was. And so I don't feel like we're there yet. And
Well,
I mean,
staff
if that's our priority, let's get that one right. Let's remove the garage. Let's look at what the accessory building was. Let's get to a place where we could approve a two-story accessory building in an appropriate location, in an appropriate form and design on that property, and not talk about anything else.
I know you're saying that staff is okay with the two-story garage, but they're very specific in the staff report, which was the same as the last time you were here, that says that it does not approximate the historic building, that it utilizes a height, roof form, window, and door that's not consistent with what was there. And, you didn't bring that back with any work or any changes. So I don't know how we would approve that today with staff not being in support of it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I mean, if you're going to just propose the two-story structure, it would be nice to see that strategically considered on the site without just being like it's an A, B, or A, or B add-on.
Well, the two-story structure won't change because, again, it's the footprint is there, the foundation's there.
Well, if it doesn't change, then it won't be approved most likely, because we're not approximating the form or design. You mean
No, it's-
location, but if you want, I don't think this commission's gonna give both of these buildings a shot. So I feel like let's just focus on the one that was original, that is most important to your client, and get it done right.
So for staff's understanding, because a couple of points. The photos that we have, it appears to be an entirely new foundation, or at least entirely new concrete that has been perhaps poured on top of an old foundation. It is a foundation that was poured without any permits and without any inspections. So the fact that we have a foundation there, yeah.
Just so
but I
everyone
mean,
knows that.
The
I
fact
could have
that
stopped all of this
we-
long ago.
Trust us, we've seen it long enough that we know
I
you weren't
wish,
the
yeah.
original.
The
I
fact that
wish.
there's a foundation there now, that foundation shouldn't be there. And the commission shouldn't be asked to base their decision on what happens with the structure on an existing condition that was built without any approvals. I think even if we are putting it back exactly where it was, it's currently sitting on not one but two property lines. So that may be something that needs to be modified, and that's something that we do all the time as a revision, an administrative revision to CAs, if that's the only thing. If sometimes buildings have to scoot over a little bit from one to the other. The building does have a similar roof form to the historic structure. It's in a similar placement and a similar footprint to the historic structure. We know that the historic structure had been modified over time. It had vinyl siding on it, so there are some things that we don't know about what it originally looked like. I think for staff going forward, if we're telling the applicant, we'll come back with just this building, it would be helpful to know what else about this building needs to change, number one. And number two, it would be helpful for staff to know, is the commission in support, regardless of what changes about this building, of an accessory building that is not a garage in the scale and size and height? Because we typically would not be supportive of just a accessory building. You know, we have lots of two-story garages. That's a common feature throughout the district, but we don't typically see two-story buildings that are just a two-story shed,
Do
essentially.
we know factually this was, well, let me reframe that. Do we know with certainty what the original size and footprint of the two-story accessory building was?
We have good information on the original. I think they're pretty close, or if not matching, the footprint of
And
the historic building.
We know that it was not a carriage house or an auto house.
The Sanborn maps from the beginning to the end say auto house.
Okay.
It looks like many, many, many other carriage houses throughout this neighborhood.
Then it's an auto house.
There used to be a driveway from Francis that cut through the backyard. I don't think that's an original driveway. Originally, this was one parcel. Where that red line is right now, there is not a property line there. It is all one parcel between those two houses. And my belief is that there was a driveway between those two houses that is no longer there, or that they had some form of access from the alley at some point. But I have not seen anything to convince me that this was not originally built as an auto house. Was it used as a dwelling for many, many years? Absolutely. This house was chopped up into flats. The garage was chopped up into flats. This property has evolved significantly over the years, but I think originally the building
to the
was an
main
auto
house,
house.
that happened long before my current client.
Yeah,
has
no,
this
we know
house.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
this house has, I mean, you see it go, how different from 1919 to 1922. Look how different that back building looks, how it's located, how it's oriented.
Right.
How near it is to the alleyway.
All of that
So-
is fairly irrelevant because of what's being asked of us today and what we know to be true originally. And when we do know what was there, and you are already, you're already at a huge advantage because we know that it was a two-story and we know that it was big, so you can already get something wonderful. And I don't think that there's any guideline justification for going beyond the scope of what we originally know was there.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be off the property line. It needs to be an auto house with whatever type of quarters or space above it, and it needs to fit within the district. And I don't think that the guidelines suggest there's any alternative other than that.
I have a question for staff. Katie, if we do the denial, because I always get confused with this prejudice business, is there a way we can, because you're saying if you deny it with prejudice, I can't bring back
The exact
just
same
not
thing.
the exact same thing, but I
right.
could make one little change and that's okay?
Well,
Like, because it'll be about the same configuration, same size. We might shift it, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know where we're going to go. You know I'm going to call you, though,
Right.
and we're going to sit
Yes.
down. But
you can reapply for something different within that year. And I think there's some discretion on how different it has
different.
to be. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably just removing the garage would be quite different. Right. I mean, just the two buildings. I mean, the fact that there's no longer two accessory structures, that
I
would be
think
different.
if
to know.
this construct a two-story building is denied with prejudice and you applied again for this exact same two-story building, I would say that item
would be
was
the
denied with prejudice. We're not going to hear that item all over again.
Okay.
Unless it has changed
Right.
in some way.
Right.
Or unless we have an abundance of new information that the
No,
commission
I
wasn't able to
understand.
consider
I just wanted to
before.
make sure I would be able to bring back a similar structure in the future.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, do what you guys
Okay.
gotta do.
Anybody have a motion they would like to make?
So That was a question to the commission from staff of if this comes back as an accessory building and not a garage and it's 2 stories, I mean, is that a path that is worth the applicant pursuing? And you maybe can't tell me that right now, but
They just shake their
I mean,
head.
it's in the guidelines, like black and white. Some of these things are not black and white, and there's no unique circumstance that I can think of.
I didn't quite
that-
hear the question, though. I'm sorry. What were you asking?
just if it comes back as a 2-story accessory building, not a garage, is that
Oh.
worth you pursuing? Or
I
does it
see.
need to come back?
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be hard for us to find a unique circumstance to deviate that much from the guidelines.
Even though, maybe we've got evidence that it was always housing, that's just not enough because there's that.
Well, you have evidence it
A-
was housing at one point, not always. We have evidence that it in fact was an auto house, like actual evidence. I mean, it was built with the intent to be an auto house. So if it's rebuilt, the intent is to be an auto house. And again, like,
I just
you're already
wonder-
at such an advantage. Like you're fighting for more than the highest threshold that most people are asking for, which is a 2-car, 2-story large garage. So like you already have the premium for this. Yeah, like the guidelines aren't always clear and they often leave a lot of wiggle room, but I can think of no justifiable unique circumstance to ever go forward with making this a second dwelling for, 2 to 4 more people in the backyard or, a unit up, unit down or whatever. Like, I just can't come up with any unique circumstance that would have us move that direction or for 2 buildings on the property.
And even then, it's not on us to come up with a unique circumstance. We need you to provide that evidence.
Right.
So if you find something new between now and then feel free, but if not, then I think you know the direction you probably need to go.
Okay.
Anybody from the public? And members of the public, anybody wish to speak to this? We do have neighborhood comments, but I think we've pretty much encompassed those with our own comments. Okay, nobody from the public wishes to speak, so do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion on HPCA 25-00115 to deny all items with prejudice.
Second.
Okay. Let's vote on that one.
Do we have, with the findings in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay. That, those items are denied. All right, moving on to HPCA 25-00119.
This is at 441 Northwest 29th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Malaika Khan, Meka LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove all wood siding and components elective, and 2, replace wood components elective. The commission has heard this twice previously, so they are out of continuances. Today has to either be an approval or a denial. Other than submitting some additional information about a siding product, no new information has been provided. What the commission has asked for previously is more detailed documentation of the condition of the existing siding and of what elements of the siding and other wood components on the structure would be replaced. So with that not having been received, we would recommend denial today. I would say it would be a denial with prejudice. This is all work that potentially can be approved by staff. So the applicant could come back and work with staff toward approval of things like replacing siding.
Did you say denial with prejudice?
Yes.
And why
I
would
guess
it
it
be?
would, well,
It would be without, so they
guess-
could resubmit, right?
technically we would not want them to resubmit as they've submitted to this point because we don't have the information that we need. So denial with prejudice would mean they would have to submit a new application with new information, which is what we would want to see. But you all could do either, it's fine. We'll work with them on hopefully getting administrative approval.
Okay. No applicant present, so
Motion.
Do we wanna
any members of the
confirm? I
public
don't-
wish
yeah.
to speak? And any commissioners have questions about this or about staff's opinion on it? Okay.
I'll make
Carry
a
on.
motion on HPCA 25-00119 To deny with prejudice items number 1 and 2, because the specific findings of staff.
Second.
Okay, can vote in prime gov, please. Okay, that has also been denied. Moving on to HPCA 25-00145.
This is at 2925 North Harvey Parkway, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Tyler Lawler for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove storm windows required, and 2, replace all windows required. Staff did recommend approval for removal of the storm windows. That's something that the guidelines support. And we would be able to administratively approve installing new storm windows if that was requested. This was seen by the commission at the previous meeting, and there was some direction given on looking into replacing the previously replaced vinyl windows with a product that meets the guidelines. The applicant has come back with the proposal to replace windows at the front of the house and on the side in more visible locations. We've still recommended continuance. Ultimately, the guidelines say that all windows, regardless of their location, need to meet the guidelines when they're replaced. If there's no questions for staff, the applicant's present.
Okay, welcome back. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Tyler Lawler, 440 Northwest 22nd Street, Oklahoma City.
Okay, so just to be clear, nothing's changed about the condition or any documentation. It's just that we're talking about now replacing the street-facing windows.
Correct.
Okay, so, and somebody jump in here if I'm misremembering this, but I think the conversation was that we recommended that we were not in favor of this and that we wanted them all replaced, but that we were in favor of extending beyond our normal timeline to get the project done because of the expense. Is that?
That's not how I remember it.
Yeah, I remembered that it was the front and like the immediate side ones towards the front, not all of them.
Okay,
I think what I recall is, yeah, there was some discussion about, is there an opportunity to prioritize? And we said, you come to us and make a proposal, you know, kind of the visually accessible ones from the street. And then maybe there's some consideration in the future that hopefully he would continue to replace the rest of them over time.
Katie, do you have any other?
I think that's all of that is kind of an accurate summary of various points that were made at the meeting. Yeah.
okay, commissioners, any questions, comments, updated thoughts?
I think one of the questions we had or discussed last time is like, I mean, I know it's costly to put in windows, period, whether they're historically accurate or not. I assume you've looked at what it would cost to fully replace all of the windows to meet the guidelines.
Right.
Can you?
That's, you know, it's not going to be done in the 2-year period. That was my understanding of the discussion last time. It was, you know, 1 year for the CA and then an extension for an additional year. But to be honest, I don't have the finances to do, you know, the entirety of the house, I don't think, in the next 4 to 5 years. It's a 2-bedroom bungalow. I'm a little on my element here, but I went with like the best window guy that I could find. I spoke with Marva, and she put Brad Owen. So he said he could use the existing jambs, he thought, and the windows aren't size, you know, the windows didn't change size. So he said that he thought we could move forward with the 6/1 sashes and make it historically accurate for those front 6.
It's quite a pickle because it's nothing we would have ever gotten close to approving had it come to us, and I think that's the problem. It's not like a debatable
Right.
gray area. It's truly something that would have been probably an immediate denial. I sympathize. I definitely sympathize. I've worked with Brad a lot, and he's working on
Yeah.
some of my windows. I like the leniency of requiring that they're all replaced, but with available extensions. I don't know, Katie, like what the max allowable, when does that extension run out? I know that you guys can approve one without us, I think, and then does it have to come back to us for more extensions?
Yeah, we can do a 6-month extension administratively, and then after that, the commission can approve an additional year, so that's 2.5 years.
What happens after 2.5 years?
After that, it would be expired, and you would have to reapply.
And there's
if you
no
were
way
gonna
to
do
extend
additional
it
work.
beyond that?
The ordinance doesn't give us an ability to keep going.
If, and I'm sure you can't answer this with certainty, but like maybe it's come up before, I mean, say in 2.5 years, he's replaced all the forward-facing ones, and he's coming back and asking for an extension. Is it, or a new application for the same thing? I mean, is it likely we could do this process again with an extension for another 2.5 years for the back half?
Yeah, like have him apply again and do it. Yeah, I think so.
I feel like that's a lot of leniency, so
As part of my application, I did submit, it's my untrained eye, but there are a number of, I submitted 10 other homes to my eye that have similar non-historic windows.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately, we can't speak
right,
to those.
but it's like, are those going to be policed in the same manner?
They might already not be out of compliance, and
Because I operated in good faith, and last time the feedback I heard, misconstrued, I can go back and watch it, was, come back, have the plan to replace those front-facing, forefront, and the two closest to the street. And it was my hope that that was going to proceed today and get resolution and move on. But
are you proposing just the forefront, or you do the?
I proposed the front 6,
Okay,
which was,
okay,
I think,
okay. Thanks for
Ms.
that.
Jordan last time said those were the ones she was most concerned about.
yeah, anything that's forward-facing, it's going to
Yeah.
receive priority. So definitely most concerned about those. But again, just because it's really doesn't fall in any sort of a gray area. It is, and it's something that is starting to happen more and more, that people are just operating without doing their due diligence or, ask for forgiveness rather than permission, mindset, whatever. And so it's something that if we don't really put our foot down on, we should expect to see again and again and again. I would
Yeah.
be really in favor of requiring all of them and allowing extensions up to, absolutely the most we can issue.
I think there's
I mean,
some public comments.
Yeah,
Yes.
is commission done or?
Okay, so it's the forefront and then the two that are right in front of the portico.
Yeah.
Okay, members of the public? Anybody? All right, would you state your name and address for the record?
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue.
Welcome.
How are you?
Well, doing all right.
Jefferson Park asked for Heritage Hills' support on this issue. You probably saw that in some of your packets. So I think you all have covered it. Applicant lives in an HP district and bought a house in another HP district. We have to assume that they are aware of what goes on where they buy property or live, and we're agreeable to leniency, but we don't think that we can set a precedent or accept that it's okay to change out windows when windows is something that we've always held the line on. I'm sorry there was a mistake made, but it needs to be rectified in some kind of manner that's agreeable to you all, and we just urge you to hold the line on windows.
May I say one more thing?
Sure.
So the windows I replaced were in awful condition. Some of them were plexiglass, some of them were painted over completely. So the vinyl windows, while not ideal, are a significant improvement on what was there originally.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that there's so many windows for size, and I know that it's my problem, but it does factor into the finances to replace the entirety of the windows in a 5-year frame. I can't guarantee that I can accomplish that for that house. That's just the
I
truth.
think, we've seen a few people propose other materials for windows,
Yeah.
and, materials change rapidly, and our guidelines don't change rapidly. But I don't think that I just think the crux of it is that if you'd come and shown us how deteriorated they were,
Yeah.
and, made a case there that maybe there would be some middle ground for a different type of material that's not solid wood custom-built windows. But
What realistically am I supposed to do between now and the next, if I get a continuance? What's going to change? I'm just going to come back and say, I can do 2 more? I mean, realistically?
it's a great question for staff. I mean, with a continuance, it's your choice as to whether you bring the same thing back.
Okay.
And, live to fight another day, or bring us a unique circumstance, or bring some other type of evidence, or bring a new make changes to your application.
So I have a couple of thoughts. One, I don't know if you talked with your window person at all about replacing windows. I know the ones on the front and the sides that you're showing are 6/1. Were you asking for all 6/1, or was there discussion about going with 1/1 on the back and the sides?
We were just going to try to make it historically accurate for the windows that were there originally, so we went 6/1 on all those 6 new proposed historic windows.
That's a good point,
It does
Katie.
look like most of them were divided light. There's a few that were not, but those might have been non-historic windows. I think that one option for the commission, and I feel like we kind of did this with another applicant that had an issue with painted masonry, is to approve the replacement of all windows with wood windows that meet the guidelines, with the understanding that you have no plans to do all of them right now. And then kind of check in at intervals. And, prior to that CA expiring, staff would check in with the applicant. Hey, do you need an extension? Do we want to come back to the commission and report out on the status? But at least those front ones could get done sooner rather than later.
Okay.
We would have it on the record that a replacement of all of them with wood windows was appropriate.
I'd be open to that
So
with a
that you can move
caveat.
forward. And then we've got an open CA that we can continue to monitor, to revise if something needs to be revised, like if he finds a more affordable window product that would meet the guidelines and he could get a few more done.
So would that be a new application or is it?
The
an
application
approved-
is to replace all windows, and it would just be with the condition that all windows will be wood windows as proposed for the front of the house.
Okay. I think that's probably the most agreeable solution we
Yeah.
are ever going to come up with, so.
I'm agreeable with that with the caveat, I can't guarantee, in 4 years' time that all of them have been replaced. Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody care to make a motion? I can't make one.
Okay, so clarify the motion for me.
So it would be, let me look at what the,
It's to approve with the condition that the windows
yes.
meet the guidelines.
yep.
And Katie, the question about the 6/1s, were you kind of thinking that as long as maybe they're not all replaced back with 6/1s?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
thinking maybe there's ones on the back that are not visible from the street where if he goes back with a 1/1, that would be less of a concern and it would be a little more affordable. So that would be
Okay.
another thing to look into.
And maybe something we would approve anyway, under a variety of circumstances.
Okay.
So I think you could approve with the findings in the staff report with the condition that all windows will be replaced with solid wood windows as proposed for the front of the house.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve HPCA 2500145 with the conditions in the staff report and the condition that all windows are replaced with wood windows throughout the entire house.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, congratulations, Ish.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have HPCA 25-00157.
This is at 2241 Northwest 28th Street, Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Jonathan Reinke, Living Spaces LLC, for Kurt Dubry for certificate of appropriateness to 2, construct new garage, elective, 3, install new driveway, elective, and 4, extend existing wood fence, elective. The commission heard this application previously. There was an approval to demolish a garage. Am I making that up? Sorry, we had several garages
believe
from,
we approved,
from this
yeah.
applicant at the previous meeting. There was some discussion on the new garage about the roof form. There's also comments in the staff report on the overall size of the garage that's larger than what the guidelines would typically support. We've also communicated with the applicant about it, even though the building that was demolished was an apartment, that they would not be allowed to build back a second dwelling, even if they built back a garage of the same size and number of stories. It cannot be a dwelling. And then we've also discussed that the length of the driveway, similar to another case we had previously, is not now and would not, as proposed, be long enough to accommodate a parking space for a vehicle. So that's always a concern with cars hanging over the sidewalk or sticking out into the street when they park in the driveway in front of the garage. I think we have a recommendation for continuance, again, to address some of those items.
Okay, looks like the applicant's present. Do you mind stating your name and address for us?
John Reinke, here for, I'm at, my address is 2304 Northwest 26th Street, and I'm here for this one, obviously, 2241 Northwest 28th.
Okay, great. Commissioners, any questions about the project in its current iteration, the changes that have been made, those that were requested, those that were not made, so on?
Is this the one that had the different address?
Yes.
Yes. It looks like you moved around a lot of the windows that we requested, which I think made a big difference and looks really cohesive. One question I had for staff was whether, even if we were to approve this right now, and you touched on this in your summary, but would the applicant need to officially have included a request for a recommendation for a variance?
So typically we like to do that all in one batch, but it's not uncommon for something to get caught at the building permit stage that actually does need a variance.
Okay.
And they would just have to come back and get that recommendation and then go to Board of Adjustment if they do say that it needs it. This doesn't come up very often,
Right.
Surprisingly, but it's just something that has come to our attention with a few recently. So, when you're building back in the same footprint, there may be some leniency there on an existing condition, or they may say, no, you don't meet the requirement, you need a variance.
And it's been my experience in a lot of these historic situations that either a variance is very easy to come by, or oftentimes I've actually had several projects that are building right on the property line in a variety of these neighborhoods where we didn't even have to file for a variance. They just grandfathered it in and moved us on. So with respect to that particular thing about the placement of the building, the length of the driveway, do we know what the setback needs to be? Does it, I think, did anybody have that as a written thing? 'Cause our current placement of the property line is 16 feet from the back of the gutter, and then we've got another 10 feet from that point of the property line to the current placement of the building. So, we'd need another 10 feet if we needed to be inside the property line, but that would be really, really unusual for the whole neighborhood. So even along the Young's Corridor, which is something that I often state has developed along the years and decades as a very unique kind of entry within this particular neighborhood.
So I think for new construction of a single-family home, you have to have a parking space that is entirely within your property and not sticking out into the right-of-way. So it would need to be approximately 18 feet back so that you can park a car in the driveway and not be in the right-of-way, on the sidewalk, et cetera.
Well, that would thrill my owner. At least I'd say at least 30% of this project was predicated on the idea that he hates having his cars hang out on the gutter. So, it's definitely a problem for the structures on this particular part of the corridor. So, so we'd definitely love to shift the building back, and that would, of course, change things like our lot coverage, and we would need to address the width of the driveway, which is one of the other comments that's been persistent from last month to this month. And that particular thing is kind of predicated on the question of how do we address the garage doors as they relate to the building and the access to the spaces within the building. So I'm looking for guidance from the board to see which way would be the way we should go. So as noted in the staff report and in comments, we did do a survey of the neighborhood along Young's and Barnes both. And pretty much, I don't remember what the exact percentage is, but there's only, I think, 2 buildings left that have a 2-car garage that actually have 2 individual parking doors or garage doors that are at that 8-foot plus or minus size. Everything else has been amended to a 16-foot door. And in my write-up for the submittal, I had mentioned that pretty much every one of those ones that still exists in that condition, that center post has taken some damage, or it's been amended to get rid of the damage. So from a practical standpoint, having a wider door is definitely okay. I looked into the guidelines, both that were submitted with the staff report and went into, just kind of make sure I didn't miss anything. And the size of the door isn't actually iterated specifically unless I missed something. So along in this neighborhood along Barnes, we have at least one building that has been built since the protections took place for historic preservation, and that one actually has 10-foot doors, which we don't necessarily want. What we do want on this one, just to be very clear, the preference is definitely to have 2 garage doors. We feel like that definitely adheres to the architectural direction that was there before and what the neighborhood would have been developed in the past. It looks better in terms of how it breaks up the face that faces west, and just everything about it from a usability standpoint, from an architectural standpoint, from just the way that it balances out. That is definitely the preference that my owner would like to go. If we can't do the 9-foot doors, then he definitely wants to do the 16-foot door, just because that's going to give him the best use of space for vehicles that he and his guests are driving, access to the interior of the garage. So those are the directions we want to go. If we can't do a 9-foot door, then he wants to do a 16. So I'm looking for a concrete direction to go from the board on that. Either of those would be perfectly fine, with preference being towards the 2 9-foot doors.
Standard is 8, just to make sure.
So, yeah, John is right. There's nothing, and Angela, Daryl, wave at me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing in the guidelines that specifically says 8. 8 is a typical historic garage door width. That's what we have typically told people is appropriate. When we get up to 9 feet, 10 feet, it starts to look not residential. But there's not a number. Yes.
I think 7 was typical for the historic openings, and we've expanded to 8.
That sounds right. I think 7 would be quite impossible.
Yeah,
today
no, 7's
for most
definitely
vehicles.
practical.
Yeah.
So it's
And-
more just that it would not be in keeping with the historic nature of the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's more or less correct, but, I definitely would make the argument here that it's not so much about the size of the door, although that does impact it, as the character of the door, and, whether we're doing something like a good example is the modern house at the corner of 27th and Young's, which a lot of people are very familiar with. Those are super commercial looking doors. They're steel, they're glass, all that stuff. The door that we're proposing to use here is a wood long panel design, very, very much in step with what you would have seen historically. So
You're talking about the Art Deco house, though?
that's the one I was referring to that
Right.
has that
So, I
real
mean,
commercial. Yeah, I know, completely.
Those
I only
doors are
brought
in
it up
keeping with that
as-
house.
Yeah, so ironically, I had a hand in building that house too, but so it hasn't held up as much as I would have liked. But anyway, the point is that just drawing a distinction between residential style and commercial style is really the only reason I brought that up. It's definitely not part of my argument as to whether or not this is appropriate in the sizes we've proposed, just, kind of this is that contrast. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to just kind of, just address the other 4 points in the staff, the other points in the staff recommendation. With respect to the size, and I think I addressed this last time, and and we actually touched on it briefly with the other project that I brought last month. The size is bigger than the guidelines allow, but in this corridor, on this corner, with the other structures around it, it definitely fits. It's appropriate with respect to this specific condition. I wouldn't propose it in another spot within the neighborhood if it wasn't on this particular corridor. Sorry. If we did go with a 16-foot door, we could actually shrink the overall footprint a little bit, just by virtue of not having the space between the doors. But as I said before, that's kind of where it is. So, we definitely feel that this building fits this spot and this lot as we've got it drawn. We already talked about the doors, talked about the driveway size as a function of the doors, and we also are okay to shift east. There is a note here about the height still being a little bit too high. I touched on that last time, and both the first floor and the second floor in the existing building are both 7 foot high. So if we're using standard 8 foot height and we are using a 16-inch LVL for or I-joist for our second floor framing, and you take into account the pitch of the roof, we're pretty much where we need to be as a minimum. I really can't make the building much shorter. Ironically, if I actually added a wall that I don't have in the plans, but it's notated as part of my justification for the size, there's a note here that says that I had made a statement that a wall separating both bays was part of my reasoning, which I've never made that point. But if I did have that wall, I could actually have a smaller joist member, and I could shrink the building by 4 to 6 inches, maybe. So I know that's a very subjective call, and I would want to run it by the engineers first. But that's about the only place I could actually make a shift in the height of the building as it currently stands. Let's see. Oh, and then the last thing is, and there's a note here that the preference was to mirror the existing built structure with gable ends, with the access running east and west. And on the page 5 of the submittal, I actually did a SketchUp of what a gable might look like there. I did not fully render it, but it's basically utilizing the same pitch. All it really does is add siding, and from a perspective of how things look from the road, it'll actually make the building look bigger because, without that roof line leaning backwards, you get more in your face, as it were. So we still kind of like the hip roof because it does minimize the overall visual impact. So I think that's all my notes. Thank you guys for holding with me. So we're hoping that we can get a vote to let us build it with the hip roof, 2 9-foot doors, we would definitely want to work with staff to relocate it on the lot if we have to move it back, but that's something that I feel like we can probably work with Board of Adjustment or the city and see if they actually are going to require it here at this time. I think my gut says that they would be okay with leaving it where it is because it would, because it already is a vast improvement to the conditions that they usually see, but I can't speak for them. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? What would you like to dive into first?
I feel like we need to go with the gable roof just to approximate what was there before.
And this is the original structure? Do we know?
Or at least some form of it
Yes, I mean, it looks like it's been probably
recited.
recited and stuff over time, but that looks like it is the historic garage.
I do
Yeah.
agree that the hip roof creates less of a massing problem and is potentially more common throughout Shepherd, but this is sitting here, so that's a little tricky. I was kind of hoping they said, no, we have no idea if this is exactly how it was, but.
Yeah, well, and I remember from last time we did talk about the fact that this is pretty well documented as having been a two-story structure from the very beginning. So I'm pretty confident the roof line is what it was, and I think that whole structure on the north side, on the south side, is addition. As Katie said, someone came by and vinyl sided the thing. So. But as far as the roof line goes, we've already taken some steps towards doing that, and my owner is fine with that. We thought we were doing the right thing by trying to make the roof less impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the right thing, but the guidelines don't.
Yeah, no, granted. So, I mean, that's definitely a simple enough change. It doesn't shift any of our overall plans, and it's a quick and easy thing to do. So, definitely something we would be happy to do.
The garage doors for me are like a non-starter. I think 8 would be the max that I would think is acceptable here, but anybody else?
They're like an 8-6 halfway point.
Well, they
Or
said
if-
7. Did you say 7 was the?
Oh, I think
Historic?
originally,
Yeah.
historic garage doors were probably 7.
It's like we're kind of just.
No, I know. I really do feel like 2 doors does look better and is obviously more historic. But I also understand the size of cars and needing to maneuver, so.
Right. Yeah. It just so happens that my owner has a frequent guest who drives a Ford Raptor, and so that's been kind of the how am I going to cram that in this building? And
Thank God for street parking.
yeah. So yeah, I know. So and that's that's part of it. To answer Caitlin's question, I can do an 8'6" door. That's
I don't even know if I was allowed to offer that. That was more of a question for staff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I asked the same question of my vendor. I was like, so, how common is it? How much price does this add to the overall structure? And he was like, well, they're expensive already, so it doesn't really add that much, so,
I think where we commonly have to make allowances regarding, like you said, maneuverability is either the interior maneuverability, which is not going to be an issue if at your current proposed size, right?
Right.
Or if somebody's got a super tight turnaround, a weird angle in their backyard, and they just cannot make, or into an alley,
Yep.
and they just cannot make a small double door work for them. But I do think anything over 8 feet is starting to look really I don't know what the
Yeah.
invisible threshold is between 8 feet and 9 feet, or if it's between 8 feet and 8'6" but
yeah.
without some sort of circumstance, it does feel a little.
Yeah. Did you happen to see the photograph that I took of the garage at the corner of 28th and Barnes? It's a east-facing double-door garage. It's got wooden doors, and the garage itself is green. I'd submitted it in the package as a photograph, but I don't know if it made it to your handouts.
Page 8.
They're 10-foot doors.
Was the existing garage door 8 foot?
This existing door?
Yeah.
I would have to look at the plans. I think it's maybe 8, but I think it's 8 by 7, so it's 7 foot tall. So, anyway, but, hey, look, I've got a handout. Thank you, Angela.
So the greenhouse, are you saying those are 9 foot?
Those doors are actually 10 feet.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon? I do not know the width of the wall they occupy. I didn't dive into the plans that they had submitted. I do know from the owner of that particular house grousing about it to me and being in front of here that he didn't get everything he wanted, but that he had to go before this. So I would have to look at the property thing to find out what that wall is. But I mean, we can say that if those are 10 feet, that's 20 feet. Then you got about, say 1 foot on either side. So that's 22, and that's about 16 inches between the doors. So that's going to be 23 and a half, roughly. So, so yeah, but we're not asking for 10-foot doors, and the only reason that I'm showing them is that they're in a residential application, and this is, I mean, it's so subjective. I definitely am not seeking to cause an argument or anything, Sarah, but those look very residential to me. So, and it's just the wood treatment and things that are on them. So definitely can be done. It's just a matter of how we approach it.
Yeah, I'll say it. 9 foot doesn't bother me. The guidelines don't specifically say 8. I think there could be a case made for it, but that's just me.
I think I'm more concerned about the driveway width matching the width of the garage doors.
Yep. And we are definitely, right now, the maximum driveway that we would be putting with those two doors would be to the outside of the trim of the garage doors. So it would be, actually I think I have it written down. Yeah, so it'd be 19 feet, would be the width of the garage door.
That'd be 19 feet
Yeah.
versus 16 feet.
I mean, 19 feet versus 16 feet is not nothing, but
Yeah.
how do we
So-
feel about the size of the garage? That's another,
As in
I
the
mean-
footprint or the height?
the footprint. I mean, what's the justification for the larger footprint? Like, what are we working with here?
Pretty much the justification for that we're utilizing in this is the unique circumstance of this particular spot in the neighborhood. And that really is pretty much the grounding for our justification here. Directly across the street is the 3-car garage with the apartment on top. And I'm sorry, directly across the street is the 2-car garage with the apartment on the top. And just to the north of that is the 3-car garage with the apartment on top. The house directly to the east of this one has a 600 and some odd square foot garage. That's actually notated in my write-up. Yeah, so 660 square feet is the neighbor directly to the east of us. Yes, that 2237. So, I mean, so the justification really is about the unique circumstance of this part of the neighborhood. And the garages here are of a size that this would look right in step with them.
What is the current square footage of the existing, or it may have already been demoed, but what
Let's
was
see.
it?
I think it's, the footprint is 300 and some odd.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got
I
it
don't know,
on-
I mean, like, going up that big of a, I hear you, but like going for, obviously you deserve a bigger garage than 320, but yeah, going from 320 to 565 is, it's a big change.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And again, I wouldn't suggest it for anywhere in the neighborhood, anywhere along 28th, 29th, any of the central areas. It'd be inappropriate. In this particular lot, in this particular spot, it works.
Has it been reduced at all from last month?
I didn't actually make any effort to reduce the footprint. And the main reason I did not was because I found myself wrestling with the issue of the garage doors and, how they were, where they were, whether we were trying to span a certain distance or not. And after I wrestled with it for about an hour, I went, you know what, I'm going to ask the other questions first and then get to that.
Fair enough.
So, like I said, if we do a single 16-foot door, then we don't need the space to kind of we don't need that division between the doors, and then we can shrink it a little bit, So I know that we'll still, I think I put 5% in my forward to the amendments, but I have not done the work to tell you exactly how much that would be.
I think that due to the inconsistency of garage types and doors in Shepherd, I don't find myself immediately opposed to a single door. But the size, I mean, there's really not a rhythm for garages in Shepherd
Yeah,
it
it depends on where you're at, So
But I don't know, I'm not hearing we've kind of, as a commission, been trying to move towards maybe updated standard of a 500 square foot footprint, and trying to give people a little more than the 450, understanding that it impacts your ability to actually use it at 450. But with an exterior staircase, 550 feels pushing it without some really necessary rationale or some huge lot or lack of visibility or something else.
Right,
How
yeah.
deep is it?
How deep is
The
it?
garage?
It is, I've got it right here.
I think it's 23 feet wide and 25 feet deep.
25.9.
Yep. So, and that 25.9 is pretty much where, one of the places where my owner was like, well, we can shift this here, So, and those really come to kind of an interior usability, standpoint. But so we could definitely bring some square footage off of that, But 450 is, going to be a non-starter for my client.
I think if you could try to get closer to 500, then it would be more of a conversation.
I will note on the county assessor, the property across the street is 660 square feet, and the property directly next door is, I lost my note. The property across the street is 624, the property next door is 660.
Yep.
We don't have language in the guidelines for larger garages abutting like we do two-story garages
Actually,
abutting, right?
we do.
we? What
Yeah.
does it say?
It says, let me see if I can.
Is it in here?
So
I've
you
just
all
overlooked it.
you all have some discretion to allow a larger garage when surrounding garages are at a larger size. I think I just closed the actual
And those
staff
are
report.
original garages?
Yeah. Yeah, that I do remember that. Anytime that I've ever stood before you guys arguing for a larger garage, it's usually been predicated on the neighbors, So, but I try not to do that because who knows when they built what, unless you get into all those things. So, our case in this one is really grounded in the unique circumstance of this particular location. That's really what it is.
Construction of a replacement garage may reasonably expand beyond the footprint of a historic one or two car garage up to a total footprint of 450 square feet or 5% of the lot, whichever is greater, in order to accommodate standard size parking space, Additional factors, including the level of visibility of a new garage and the size and massing of surrounding structures, may be considered. So that's right in there in 4.4.6. So something that we have talked about with larger garages before is that if the width of the garage as it's seen from the street is an appropriate width and it extends farther back into the yard to gain some additional square footage, but that is not visible from the street, then sometimes that's a justification for a larger garage. And then again, when you have surrounding garages that are also larger than average, those are other justifications for a larger garage.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is we want it reshaped a little bit to be a little deeper and a little narrower. We prefer the gable roof because we know that it is currently a gable roof. Feels like everybody's really split on the garage door situation, like 3 opinions and,
Can I
no real
vote?
consistency. So maybe that would take shape as you made some of these other changes. Anybody, anything I'm missing on? I mean, my big concern with the width of the garage and the garage doors would be a out of scale driveway, like a lot of just staring at a lot of concrete.
Right, which, I mean, moving it back on the property creates more concrete, so.
But the massing's more expected. The scale of it's more expected and more traditional versus a really wide, expansive concrete up against some oversized doors.
Yeah, and and we are perfectly happy to keep the driveway as minimal as it needs to be to service the 2 doors. So I mean, that's something that I can definitely say that's not a problem for us, not a hill we want to die on.
So we're wanting it further back, we're wanting a gable. We have no idea what we want on the garage doors. We want a narrower facade and a narrower driveway. Does that sum it up?
Would you repeat that?
I'm not sure that I'm accurate, so you might not want me to repeat it, but I think what I'm hearing is that there's momentum towards keeping the gable.
Yep, I think we're sold on that.
That
so
the
Gable's
city
good.
is probably going to want you to move it further back, if I'm interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, and we can work on that to confirm
Yeah,
with,
I don't think we
with
care
you
about
and with
that.
plan review, yeah.
But the city is probably going to require you to move it further back. And that if we are extending beyond the technical allowable of 450, we would prefer to see depth versus width.
Okay.
Which would be
Anything?
back to the single door.
I'm sorry, say again?
Which would be back to the single door if you,
Or
Right,
8 foot.
I mean, the
Or
single
8
door
foot,
makes
yeah.
it a little bit more achievable to be a little bit narrower.
Deeper.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
again, it really works, works, doesn't it just work better as a 2-door?
Well, you can go 8 foot,
Yeah.
Say again?
but you can do 2 8-foots.
Well, so, so that's the hill my client's gonna die on, is that one. It's like, it just doesn't get him what he needs to be able to get
Well, but-
into his new garage.
You said
So-
or a single.
Yeah, a single 16-foot, is also okay, because that actually gets him into the building that he wants to build. So the 8-foot door does not.
I don't find justification to oppose a single door if it's appropriate, simply because of the diversity of garages in this district, but
Yeah,
I am
And
but
there
one.
are several garages in Shepherd with single doors.
There's all sorts of garages in Shepherd. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
there is
no,
like
it's-
no overriding,
yeah, that's very, very true.
Mine had the sliding carriage doors that went to the side
yeah,
when I
that's
lived there,
what
so.
I demolished from my house in Shepherd.
Okay, so I think we're moving towards a continuance with a lot of thoughts.
Well, I mean, it almost sounds like if we do, well, I mean, the big issue is the size, at this point, because what I'm hearing is single 16-foot door, gable, potentially moving it on the lot, which isn't really an architectural thing, that's a city thing.
I think we just want to mostly see the revised footprint.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
needs to come back. I think it's a lot to consider approving with conditions. But I
But-
think you now know what we want of you, so.
Yeah, so,
You want to continue to next month?
single door gable, square footage. Yeah, let's continue to next month. I mean, if we can. Sure, I can't talk you guys into making a vote. I mean, that'd be great. I feel like we got some momentum here.
If we didn't have to adjust the footprint, I feel like we probably could, but that's,
Yeah, the unknown of
Yeah.
that is a little much.
Okay, so.
Unless you just want us to tell you 500.
All right, so.
yeah.
Okay, well, we'll take it one more time.
Maybe for the public.
Anybody from the public wish to speak? Okay, there being none, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue HPCA 25-00157 to next month's meeting.
With the specific findings in the staff report?
Yep.
Alrighty,
Second.
good deal.
All right.
Or I'm like 0 for 3 on specific.
All right, see you in a month.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Next up, we have HPCA 26-00003.
This is at 517 Northwest 40th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Rabnath Ramana for a certificate of appropriateness to one add garage door to existing carport elective. This is the first time the commission has seen this application. This is a structure that's been described as a carport. It's also appears to be described in the county assessor as a covered porch, but pretty much looks like a garage from the street. It's back behind the house in the rear yard. And it currently doesn't have a garage door, even though there's an opening that looks like it would have a door. And the applicant would like to install a door. The door that is proposed would be a metal garage door with a wood cladding applied to it that is actually magnetic. That's part of why this is in front of you all, because we've never seen this product before. So the guidelines make allowance for a wood veneer door with a concealed metal frame. Staff was a little unsure of whether this really met the intent of that guideline. It is a real wood exterior product. Given that this doesn't appear to be a historic garage and that it is located at the back of the lot where it's less visible from the street, this may be an appropriate choice. But as I said, it's not something we're familiar with, so we really wanted the commission to weigh in.
Okay, welcome. Would you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Rabindranath Ramana. I go by Rob, 517 Northwest 40th. We've lived there for 30 years. It was like this when we bought the house. Most of the adjoining houses have garage doors, and we were just doing some work on the house and talked to our contractor. And he said, "Oh, I'll get you a metal door." And I said, "I don't think you can do that." And so they said, "Let me look." And we looked at the guideline, which I think says wood veneer. And so he sent me this garage skin product. The way I read it, I mean, it says it's a real wood garage door overlay system. So it looked to me, I'm not an architect or an engineer, but it looked to me like the magnet was what attaches in the back. And so that's just kind of the background. And so I thought, I guess there are other options. Joseph, our contractor, said, you can save. It's more affordable if we can do something like this rather than a wooden door, but it seemed like at least worth a shot. I trusted his judgment, and he said he could do that for us.
Is this page 3, is this the only handout you have of what the door's like?
That's all we have. I mean, I actually looked before I came over here to see if I could get anything more than this, and I couldn't. If you're concerned about that, I'd certainly be happy.
Well, it's going to be a wood overlay.
He gave us a spec for a Lowe's metal door.
So the only difference is how it's attached.
Yeah, it would be as I understand it, the garage skins would attach to like a metal door. So the veneer would be, the garage skin is the veneer.
I could do, yeah.
And really, it's just, I think, speaking of rhythm of garage doors, I mean, I walk the dog every day for 30 years, and there are a lot of garage doors that are just, I think, like the structure with just like a single door across. And so I guess my thought would be, I don't think it'd be inconsistent with what the street looks like now. And it would help us just in terms of security and storing things.
Okay, so like a whole new consideration. And thank you for digging into the guidelines and making sure you could find something. We appreciate that. I definitely have no issue with considering this a garage and giving it a door. My only concern with this material, since we've not seen it and just kind of thinking through ramifications, is it's really impermanent. And so, well, if it goes up this way, once it starts, it's wood, so once it starts to weather and age and soften, would somebody, not necessarily you, but say this gets brought to us a few more times, does somebody just take off the magnetic panels and then they have a metal door that we would not have approved? which you would not do on a door constructed, as one product that's metal with wood veneer. You couldn't just rip it off.
I mean, the wood veneers are not exactly attached that strongly to the other ones. If you have a wood veneer door over metal, they're just a thin veneer.
Right,
I
but
think
you
this
would
just
never
depends-
just like scrape it off, is what I mean. Like you wouldn't ever
Yeah.
then go to a metal door, whereas this is in theory, like you can just take it, if it starts to look bad, you can just take it off and then you have a metal door, which we wouldn't have approved.
Or maybe it means that it gets kept quicker because it's easier to replace and it's not just a whole
Maybe.
door.
That's what I was thinking. It's
So like,
kind of like,
I feel like it's hard to make a decision based on something that someone may or may not do in the future if it's a different owner.
I would imagine
But-
the reason that this is a new product is because when you hit it, you can just take it off and replace it, and it's not rebuilding the whole door. So it,
We're not
I'm actually
under a
really
time crunch
interested
here.
in it
I mean, we
after I hit
plan
mine.
to be here a long time, so I'd be happy to bring in our contractor if you want more information about it.
Did y'all, I mean, before we get too sidetracked on this, like was there any opposition to getting a metal door with veneer that comes as a single product versus this?
We have no opposition to that. I just said, this is your territory, not mine. What do you think? And then he looked around and said, how about this? So I didn't have any opposition to
there's
that.
no
In fact,
opposition.
I was curious if we could just buy a whole door without this issue, but I haven't gone around and looked. I
Yes.
assume you can buy a
Yes.
metal door with
Yes.
wood veneer, not do the installation.
Yes, you can buy a metal door with wood veneer that's just a single product.
Okay.
And that would be my preference, just so we don't have to weigh the issue of it being impermanent if he's open to it.
If he's open to it, absolutely. I am just interested
I
in
know.
knowing this thing exists, though.
What's
What if
the strength of those magnets? Like,
It's kind of interesting,
the big stop sign in this packet, it's,
well,
And I
Katie, if he was acceptable to going to a regular traditional veneer door, then he could just come to you with that, right?
Yeah, that's
And
something we
so-
can approve administratively.
You could approve it administratively, and if you wanted to do that, then we could just allow you to go show her and do it administratively. You wouldn't have to come back.
okay, I want to make sure I understand what I need to do, though, while I'm here.
So what I would suggest is that we continue this to the May meeting. Between now and the May meeting, we can work with you toward a door that qualifies for approval by staff.
Okay.
And if we can find a door that you're happy with and staff can approve it, you won't have to come back in the May meeting. But that way, if we can't land on something or you decide this really is what you want to pursue, it's your favorite option,
Okay.
then
Come
we
back in
can
May.
come back in May.
Okay.
And with more information.
That works for us.
It
Thank you for
probably
your time.
won't look different.
What's that?
It probably won't look any different.
Right, yeah,
So-
okay.
okay.
right.
Any members of the public wish to speak to this? There being none, anybody have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA-26-0003. Continue it until the May meeting.
Second.
May 6th.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
You guys will vote. We'll wrap this one up. Okay. See you in May. Or maybe not. Okay. Number 7, we have HPCA 26-00005.
This is at 1528 Northwest 36th Street, Putnam Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Daniel Martinez, Five Stones Landscape, for Tad Burgess, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct 2 pergolas, elective, and 2, install artificial turf in 3 locations, elective. This is the first time for the commission to see this part of the application. Staff has already administratively approved a few items at this property, including the installation of some paving and artificial turf, just as a kind of edging around the paving. The larger portions of artificial turf staff wanted to bring to the commission. It's about 900 square feet total. So we wanted you all to weigh in on that and consider that. And then the pergolas are before the commission just because of their size and kind of placement in the yard. The guidelines allow for pergolas. They allow for them at this height. We didn't have concerns about it. The structures themselves not meeting the guidelines, just kind of calling out the extent of each of these products. So it is a recommendation for continuance, just to allow for that discussion.
Okay. Do you mind stating your name and address for the record?
Jacob Russell, 12200 Southwest 26th Street, Yukon.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions right off the bat?
It might be in here and I just haven't found it yet, but what is the proposed site coverage?
I believe they're right at 50% with the artificial turf.
50.6.
50.6 with turf, concrete, swimming pool.
Gotcha.
So even considering the turf impermeable, we're still in an acceptable range for lot coverage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it just feels like a lot of turf to me.
If you look in the staff report, we included a lot of information, not just about the lot coverage, but kind of the impact of artificial turf. We're seeing more and more of these installations, the impact that it has on the yard over time, the gravel and the fill that has to be installed in order to put in the turf, those sort of factors, environmental considerations that come along with using artificial turf instead of a natural landscape material.
I mean, is that a deal breaker to, reduce some amount of the artificial turf to, either sod or some kind of ground cover?
Yeah, so they did that our original application had a lot more turf, and so they already did try and get us to the 50%. If you see on the plan, there's a fescue area in the back. That we already deducted all that, so we were hoping we could get this approved. So they had somewhere to put chairs and whatnot to be able to sit out in the sun without being itchy in the grass.
I just think 50.6 is
Yeah, I have no issue with the lot coverage. It's just almost 1,000 square feet of turf is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of turf. I don't know, we don't really have a guideline that identifies any acceptable or unacceptable amount of turf other than that lot coverage percentage. So they are right at that.
this is what they're allowed.
I mean, everybody on this commission knows how I feel about turf, but I do feel like per the guidelines, they actually satisfied that requirement. So it might just need to be something that's more clarified in the guidelines if we're seeing impact studies that are relevant.
Which that is something that we are working on. in the
Right,
guidelines.
but I don't think we've, even in our subcommittee, identified like a number for turf, just the ability to review it. I mean, it's treated as impermeable, but that's still, like, they are treating it as impermeable, and we're still at 50%. So, short of having identified a percentage of the rear yard or a max, percentage of the lot to be turf, like we treat garages at the 5% or something, there's not language that really clarifies what's too much turf.
What if the turf was permeable?
It's still treated as impermeable by
No matter
Public
what?
Works, so,
Okay.
artificial surface materials.
It would make me happier if it were permeable, truly.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it just switches the rock that you put under it to open grade, and then it lets it permeate.
let's talk about the pergolas. Katie, do you want to give a broad overview of staff's concerns on the pergolas?
Angela, do you want to give a broad overview of staff's concerns? Sorry, Angela worked this one, so she's more prepared than me to.
A broad overview on the pergolas themselves. Typically, staff would administratively approve a pergola. These are very long. One is right at 28 feet long, and one is a little over. That is at the south end of the pool. The 28-foot long one is along the west side of the pool. What is atypical about the pergolas, in my opinion, is that they frame the yard. They interrupt the built-to-open space ratios that you typically see from your backyard when you look out and across the neighborhood. I was not comfortable administratively approving that. I felt like that interruption was something that needed to be discussed on a broader scale.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there's pretty much no open space outside of the front yard, which is really atypical in a historic district.
That's actually, that plan that's on there is not the right plan. We submitted a different one than that. I don't know if it got missed, but the contractors who submitted the lot plan before had the garage in the wrong spot. So there's actually, we originally designed off their plan and then had to fix it.
Can we
So-
see the accurate?
There is an accurate site plan in your packet. It does not include the forms of the pergolas. So when you go to the last site plan that's in there,
Which attachment, just to make sure we're all speaking the same language?
I'll have to pull it.
Is that attachment 3, new site plan?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you can see the pergolas go in the same spot. They didn't change. The only difference is it moved in relation to the back fence and the house. So there's more backyard. There's a lot of backyard.
Sorry, mine's not loading for some reason.
I'm sharing it.
Oh, I did look at this. I was just looking for a colorized, okay. So what we're calling the backyard is this, sorry, I feel like I'm
That
not
fescue
understanding
grass
this
area.
correctly.
Yeah, so to the left of the house is the pool and the garage. And then beyond that, the fescue is grass. At the far end of the pool, in that rectangle, is where one of the pergolas is, between the fescue grass and the pool. And then to the top of the drawing, that rectangle where it has the arch feature, that rectangle is the other pergola.
Right. So where's this extra grass that is it just the kind of,
The south end of the south end of the lot on the left.
Okay.
Was previously illustrated incorrectly, and that's where our new grass comes in.
okay.
That's also where most of the stormwater goes. So
Okay. I don't know if it changes a ton for me since you weren't really, like, on paper creating a problem in that area on the lot coverage, but what's the roofing material on this pergolas?
roofing material, we took the roofing material off, so it's all just wood.
So it's open?
Open, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just not seeing that.
The new one that you sent, we have just one plan. It just shows one design. So we don't have anything that shows the new pergola with no roof or anything like that.
I'm actually not sure what you have.
Okay. Well, what was just up there was the only thing that we have.
Right, that's
Okay,
the only
yeah.
thing that implies it doesn't have a roof and that there is more grass.
Yeah.
Right.
Would the application, I need to just look, was it phrased as if, did we review it and make recommendations based on it having a roof or not having a roof? Not having a roof, okay, thank you. It's a lot of bulk for the backyard in a historic district. That said, I can't really cite a specific, as the guidelines are written. I think you're within them as they're written.
It's also totally invisible from the street, if that has any consideration.
I mean, it brings about a really interesting point for us to consider for future evaluation about a max square footage on turf, but I don't think he's outside of the guidelines.
I don't either.
So I think unless there's something that I'm just completely missing,
Yeah, I feel like we can just approve it with conditions.
I mean, the ratio of open space is in here as a specific finding, and I think the consideration for us is that they've altered it in one specific area, but not as an overall equation.
I mean, I think it's a loophole, but.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if we're going to observe the letter of the guidelines, which we've been doing all day. I'll do it.
I mean, I guess the one, sorry, not to like throw a wrench in the works, but like new pergolas shall be compatible with the building to which they relate in proportion, size, scale, and material. So that would be the one thing, would be if we all felt like the 2 pergolas at this size were not compatible with the building.
Well, I think pergolas of this nature are never really compatible with anything in our HP districts, but we certainly approve them and they exist. I mean, they're nothing that would have ever existed in this backyard, but
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard for me to visualize because the imagery that we have is showing a roof or
like
some
a flat,
sort of.
it looks like they're all equal footing.
What
So-
image, can you guys put that on there, what you're looking at?
It just looks like it's all one height and it looks like they're just like abutting
It's
and
an
touching
original
and,
site plan.
Oh,
yeah. So it's non-dimensional, really, but,
I think the scale of the house and the fact that it is obscured in the back and it's within the guidelines is all kind of leads me to not know how I would deny it.
Anybody here to speak? From the
if y'all
public?
are y'all wrapped up on your thoughts? And any members of the public wish to speak to this, give input? Okay, there being none, commissioners, any other questions or considerations? Staff, any other considerations that we need to go over? Only for the next guy? Okay, would anybody care to make a motion on this one? And any, any conditions that we need to attach based on some of the discussion?
Do you guys have everything that you need in order? There was some confusion about what images we had.
I think you could include a blanket condition to confirm that all final drawings and site plans are submitted to staff.
Okay.
Just in case there's something that we need to verify that we have the right document.
I'll do it. I move to approve HPCA -26-000005 with the conditions that all applicable site plans are submitted to staff for final review.
Second.
Okay. You should be able to vote in PrimeGov now. All right, well, congratulations on your project and your loopholes. All right, last up on the consent docket, we have HPCA 26-00008.
This is at 100 Northwest 22nd Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Andrew Bernheimer, Bernheimer Architecture for Akshay Gupta for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct townhomes elective, 2, construct single-family dwelling elective, 3, construct duplex elective, 4, construct 2-story garage elective, 5, install fence elective, 6, install swimming pool, 7, demolish and install paving, 8, install driveway, 9, retaining wall, and 10, install mechanical equipment, 11, split lot elective. This project was reviewed by the commission in the form of a rezoning application, SPUD, several months ago, actually like over a year ago at this point. The commission recommended approval of the SPUD. They worked really closely with staff and with neighborhood representatives. It went through Planning Commission and City Council and was approved several months ago. They have submitted their application for the new construction, and this is the first time the commission is seeing this proposal. They do appear to be largely consistent with everything that is allowed within the SPUD as far as the heights, the setbacks. The lot coverage is what was specified in the proposal. We have had some discussion about one aspect of the setbacks that's about an internal setback. We'd gotten one kind of response in coordination with plan review and subdivision and zoning on how that was to be applied several months ago, and then in reviewing it more recently, they said, no, this means this, not that. So we'll continue to work with the applicant on that and make sure we all are on the same page about what that means. And that has to do with whether or not a building can be on the property line if they are to go forward with splitting the lot. Right now, it's all one parcel, but if they do split the lot, then rules come into play as far as setbacks within those property lines. There are a couple of different items called out in the staff report for consideration. Some of the placement and materials and heights of the fencing are not consistent with what the guidelines allow, and I'm looking at the wrong staff report. Let me pull this up. One other item that we've communicated back and forth with the applicant on is the use of the alley to the west of the property. It looks like a driveway, a shared driveway with the neighbor, but it actually is a platted alley. It has been closed, but to our knowledge, it has not been vacated. So any work done in that alley would require at a minimum a revocable permit if it were to be approved. And typically you can't do anything terribly permanent with a revocable permit. So there is some question there with fencing and things along that alley. There is a retaining wall proposed on the Broadway side of the property. The guidelines typically do not support a retaining wall in a front yard or in the yard where it's visible from the street if it did not exist historically. We have talked with the applicant about there is some necessity to that based on the proposed development and the current slope of the lot. The retaining wall isn't terribly high, but it will be a change to the grade of the site. They do appear to meet the requirements for the lot split, aside from the question about whether or not the building would be allowed to be on the property line. So that's something that we'll need to figure out before that all moves forward. Otherwise, you'll see in the staff report, and then there's also comments from neighbors, there was just some feedback on the overall design and whether or not it was as compatible and as in character with the surrounding neighborhood as was expected for within an HP district. The applicant's present. There are questions for staff, or we can let them talk about the project.
Okay, why don't we start with names and addresses for the record?
You go ahead. I'm Colby Forbes from Bernheimer Architecture you say the address?
Yeah. I'm Meredith Cole, and I'm with the Bernheimer Architecture as well, and the address is 3435th Street, Workshop B513, Brooklyn, New York, 11232.
Okay, thanks and welcome.
Can I ask a couple questions to staff real quick?
Yep.
So the alley that has not been vacated, and maybe this is a question for them as well, does anybody else use that to, that one home to the south on the green where the point is, that's existing, right? And that's not on your property?
Right, the house to the south is its own parcel.
Okay.
And these are lots that were platted running east-west, the
Right.
way that house is.
Yep.
But the lots to the north of that house were developed running north-south, facing 22nd Street. So it's kind of an unusual site. I think there is use by that property owner of the alley, although the alley only runs north-south. It doesn't actually continue to the east-west. That's just kind of an existing drive.
Okay.
And then the alley is used as kind of a shared driveway with the house to the west of their property as well.
Okay, so vacation.
And there's a curb cut there and everything, and a retaining wall on
Okay.
the west property owner's side of the drive.
Vacation of the alley is probably not feasible, really, if others are using it.
I don't know. That would be a conversation with that other property owner if they would be open to having it divided down the middle to where they get their side and the other property gets their side.
On the Sanborn maps, there's quite a few dwellings, beginning in 1922 at least, even before that. The existing home that is not on this property, you're saying that was the parcel probably to the south on the Sanborn, but it faced Broadway.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, a lot to unpack. Let's see, this is our first pass on this, correct? Just making sure?
Yes.
Yes, okay, got it. Well, let's go through, why don't we start with some of the findings in the staff report and just try to break down some of those. A lot of items too. Fine, I'll start with an easy one while I find this. Talk to me about the chain link used as screening for the equipment, for the mechanical. Was that intended to permanently be chain link, or was there an anticipation of any sort of vegetation, landscaping? What's the goal there?
Yeah, I think the use of the chain link was to primarily be around the single-family home. And then we also wanted to use that to mask the mechanical units. And then we were planning on also having kind of vegetation to kind of.
So it's allowed as a fencing, but not as a screening because it doesn't really screen. So we would want to see your landscaping intentions as a part of the proposal.
Okay.
Talk like kind of big picture.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on in the site, but I mean, in the Sandborns, there was quite a few structures already. A couple concerns and things that I would like to have clarity on is, if I get to the page, it says that the northwesternmost structure is a single family, but then it also calls it a single family duplex in the unit area calculations. Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, it's a single-family home in the northwest corner. The
Okay.
center building is simplexes.
Right.
And then the eastern building are two duplexes.
Okay, so in the unit area calculation, the very first thing that says single family duplex, I believe is technically just should be single family. And I don't know if you guys can.
Yes, maybe it was, I don't see exactly what you're
Yeah, I
referring
don't
to,
know if
but
they
it
can
could
pull
be a
that up, but-
typo.
Okay, okay,
I think it may just be a typo.
Okay.
It's on this page.
okay. So it's just one unit, so it's got 4 bedrooms and that's what it's showing.
Apologies, yes.
For me, a couple things. I mean, it feels a little strange. You have 2 fronting, what is that, 22nd? And then the one fronting, well, quasi 22nd and also Broadway. I feel like those need to be in alignment. The jog is kind of strange for me on the north side of the building faces. And then considering the middle structure, the simplex, I think is what you're calling it, the porch is really just being utilized as stairs. And that's something that I don't think is appropriate or traditional and not being functional as true porches. Furthermore, I think the porches are all a little narrow. That's one of the great features of the neighborhood is, everybody loves the front porch and sits out there. And if it's not truly able to be utilized, it's kind of not serving its purpose. So those are kind of some just big picture comments that I have that are concerns of mine.
Yeah, I think the bulk of to echo you on the alignment, I think at a minimum, the 2 facing 22nd Street need to align with a traditional and expected setback that's common on the block.
Yeah.
I understand that other one facing Broadway is going to, as an overhead view, look likely like it's not aligning.
Can I just quickly ask, I think within the SPUD, the setbacks are set and they are not in alignment along that street, so we were going by what was developed within the SPUD.
Why would that be? Is it based on something that was there previously? Like, why would we have?
So it's been a bit
Yeah.
since we did the SPUD, but I think there was a significant amount of discussion around the setbacks and around allowing for the structures to kind of creep forward as they approached the corner.
Okay.
That the one at the corner could be a little farther forward than the neighboring structures, and then agreeing on the setback for the single family in the simplex.
You wouldn't get the parking in there if you didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, then maybe may seem odd, but maybe it's better if the middle one kind of creeps forward too, so it's a little bit more of a
Broken.
incremental growth, I don't know, towards 22nd. Because it just, to me, it seems very odd, that northeast corner building being jutting out to the north, out of alignment with the rest of the buildings on 20.
Yeah, and it kind of, blocks the traditional view of the neighborhood as you're approaching it in a way that we don't see at other neighborhood entrances.
And furthermore, I think the entrance into the western half of that is actually coming off 22nd, it looks like, if I'm reading that right.
Say that again.
Is there a site plan that we can just pull up?
Oh, yeah,
that's-
sorry. I had it up and I took it back down.
Yeah, that's how you access the.
And can you go to if you go to the, I think, first floor plan or whatever. Next, maybe. Yeah. So the second, let's see, western half of the, what are you calling that? Duplex A maybe. Where's the entrance into that?
Wait, why are they aligned here? Oh, I'm looking, wait, no?
No, I noticed that too. I don't.
Yeah, they're aligned here.
They're aligned.
They're aligned here.
They're aligned.
There's one they're not on though.
Yeah, there's
It's
one where
because
they're.
it says the porch. It's the porch that is.
No, it would mean that it would, if you were looking at it just regarding the porch, it would mean this one that is furthest to the west has the most forward location, and then it steps back and then outward again.
Yeah, the roof plan shows them not aligned.
That's what I was looking at, yeah, page 5.
Yeah. So what am I missing about?
One of
This
them has
one's on the
one,
screen.
I think one has a narrower front porch
Yeah.
than the other.
No, I
And
know,
the setback is for the front wall of the house, not for the porch. So the porches can extend beyond what the setback is.
I understand, but, so is this is the porch here, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, and this is the porch. So this is the front wall. It is forward of this front wall.
Right.
In the roof overview, this front wall is rear of this front wall. So there's a discrepancy between these two.
Oh, that might just be wrong.
That's what?
I mean, not to like dumb it down, but in one site plan, they're going up, in a straight
Yeah.
graph
Yeah.
and a setback,
Yeah.
and the other one they're jogging. So there's a discrepancy, and
Yeah.
there's a discrepancy, or I'm really misunderstanding something, which
Yeah.
is also a big possibility.
Yeah. That one does seem more incremental. That one's incremental. Yeah.
So which one's accurate, or are we just like missing dimensions on a porch on one of those or something?
I think this is
Yeah.
accurate, right? This floor.
I think
This.
Yeah,
floor.
that
This
floor
is
plan.
accurate.
That's accurate.
The accurate,
Yeah.
because I remember, after Katie mentioned it, I remember the discussion of this furthest east dwelling to be compatible with the setback of the single family nearest to it, and trying to keep kind of that line of sight similar. So this is accurate, and there's not kind of a jog amongst them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then-
So we need to be disregarding the
That roof.
setbacks identified on the, I don't know what the attachment is labeled as, the proposed site roof plan. We need to be kind of disregarding
has to
that.
get updated.
Okay.
And then on duplex A, where is the front porch? I mean, that looks like a front porch on there. Is that you're entering off of 22nd Street to access the front door of duplex A? Is that correct?
Duplex
Yes.
A is off of, the front.
Sorry,
On
can you repeat your
22nd.
question?
Yeah, so your duplex, I think is what you're calling it, there's A unit
Yeah.
and B unit. And the A unit is the western half.
Yes.
And the entrance into that unit, the front door, is actually accessible coming off of 22nd Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that little nook right there is kind of a front porch,
Yes.
stoop, or whatever you want to call it, to get into that building.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's, again, kind of something that makes me struggle with it not being in alignment, because you're using 22nd as the entrance to that unit. And so it not being in alignment with all the front facades of the rest of the street is a little bit off for me.
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to face it towards Broadway, then I think both entrances need to be off of Broadway.
Or at the rear.
Or the rear, or face it towards 22nd and have
Yeah.
both coming. I think having one here and the other here is pretty atypical of what we'd find in the district. So I think it kind of needs to be one or the other, in my opinion.
I feel,
I will just note, I think when this came through with the SPUD, there was discussion about trying to make sure that all of the buildings had a front on 22nd to maintain not necessarily that they had to have the front door, but making sure that we weren't turning a blank wall to 22nd Street.
right. I almost feel, in looking at it like this now that it's, an actual proposal versus a concept, it almost feels like these two western buildings that are facing 22nd and given addresses on 22nd need to be more consistent in size, setback, so on and so forth, with what's on that block, and this other one that faces a more commercial street and thoroughfare needs to be treated a little differently with it, but the other two, I think, need to be similar in setback and the porch scale and stuff like that. I don't know, I struggle with it because it's not gonna look like anything around it because of the massing, and that's like period, full stop. The SPUD dictates that it can be this size and this scale. So in one regard, it's kind of cool that they're entirely different. One thing that I don't love is the size of those porches really negate the idea of community spirit, which is extremely important in these districts. So even with them being really modern and contemporary and having so many architectural differences to their surroundings, I think like prioritizing that spirit and the intended use of that porch feels really important.
Yeah,
Okay.
understood.
I don't hate that that the duplex, one unit is facing 22nd and one is facing Broadway. I think the fact that it's not in alignment with the others is what visually bothers me. Feeling like if that's truly going to be accessible from 22nd, it needs to be pushed back in alignment with the rest of the homes on 22nd.
I also have a really dumb question. On these proposed north and south site elevations, it looks like there's actually 4 separate units, but are there 3?
Can you put up the sheet that you're referring to?
What page are you on?
12.
That one?
Yeah,
On
bottom
the-
left.
Are we talking about the south elevation? Sorry, repeat.
Oh, you're
the
saying
north
how it looks
elevation.
like, on the north, it looks like those
It
are
looks
2
like
buildings?
Yeah, it looks like you've actually got 2 buildings with about a foot of
Yeah.
space in between them.
Yes.
I think in our initial design, we tried to break down the scale of the building, so that's why it kind of looks like
It's a
there's-
reveal, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a reveal line
In the roof line? Okay.
in the roof line as well.
If you look in the plan, you can see the reveal on the north and south walls. I do it in buildings all the time.
It's like a little inset.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, no,
not-
I
there's-
understand.
It's just
yeah.
the brick pushback.
I just didn't see that anywhere, but thank you for clarifying. It doesn't matter that I didn't see it. I appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, that was an effort to break down the scale and allow for the massing to not be so overbearing on that corner.
Okay. Where is a site plan? What page would I find the site plan with the fencing setbacks?
So that was back on the one we were on. If you look on page 9, yes, so the fence on the west side comes all the way up to the front wall of the house, and I believe that is proposed as a 6-foot fence on top of an existing retaining wall. And a solid wood fence, and then
The east side?
that's on the west side.
I thought the retaining wall was on,
There's a new retaining wall on the east side. There's an existing retaining wall that's there, I believe.
so there's an existing retaining wall on Broadway.
No.
No, on the west side where the alley is, basically.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
in one of the pictures somewhere.
Yeah. And then the fence along the south also comes forward of the house that is directly to the south. And we have guidelines about not coming forward of the front wall of a neighboring adjacent structure.
Is that a tornado siren? Just out of curiosity. Does anybody else hear that?
I do hear that.
I do hear it.
And it
Oh,
does
way
sound like
beyond.
tornado siren.
What'd you say?
Now they don't go, "Ooh."
Yeah, okay.
But all of our phones.
But I do
They
hear
would come
it.
get us, right, if we
Yeah.
were needing to take
Oh, and I
cover?
would think our phones would be blowing up.
I think it's mechanical line.
Oh, the buzzing.
Okay, sorry.
My children make it home from school.
Welcome to Oklahoma.
What is your ceiling height? I don't see a section, but I see that it's 10.6 from floor to floor.
Yes, from floor to floor, it's 10.6.
I think our floor to floors are 10 feet.
Oh, 10 feet.
Yeah.
So then interior would be about
Like
Not
9 feet?
9 feet. Finished floor to finished ceiling.
Is that an 18-inch floor assembly?
Well, with 18, then it'd be like
It would be
8'6".
Well, 10'6".
Because it's 10 foot floor to floor.
That's level 1 is 3 foot and level 2 is 13.6.
Oh, sorry. Then yeah, 10'6". Sorry about that.
So it is an 18-inch floor assembly?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what is that?
It's somebody vacuuming or something.
Okay,
Or it could
okay.
be
It
less
could
than
be less
that.
than
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't
We
need to
haven't
be
like
18.
gotten into exactly like where mechanical would go and things like that.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this? And I'd like to understand, I know the neighborhood sent in a lot of comments, and I'd like to kind of understand broader community concerns, if you guys were wanting to speak to it. There's a lot to unpack, so we'll get the ball rolling today.
Good afternoon.
Hello, welcome. Would you state your name and address for the record?
Sherry Pemberton, 110 Northwest 22nd Street.
Thank you. All right. Any thoughts or questions for the applicant?
No, I have a statement I'd like to make. It's brief, I'll read fast. On February 5th, 1989, at 7:05 a.m., as I was driving to work, a drunk driver plowed into my car and knocked me into the lawn across the street, and then drove away, waving to me as he left. I was left with injuries that kept me from working, and so Mother encouraged me to move to Oklahoma City to heal and recover with her help. I said, what the heck is there for me in Oklahoma City? I did come to Oklahoma City and purchased 110 Northwest 22nd Street in 1995. And that's my home that is now 101 years old. As I was viewing the property, the then owner mentioned that the property was located in Winans Addition, Winans being the name of my ancestors who had homesteaded the land. Not too long after I settled in, Debbie Blackburn walked down from her home on the block and welcomed me. Debbie was our state representative at the time and had been directly responsible for getting the right turn only curbs installed along Broadway, as well as many other neighborhood improvements. Bill and Edith welcomed me. They've lived next door for 45 years and raised their children there. Randy Ice welcomed me and invited me to the Heritage Hills East and Heritage Hills meetings and events, and is always a wealth of encouragement and information regarding the neighborhood history. I quickly became involved in Heritage Hills East and attended neighborhood events and regular meetings, serving as secretary of Heritage Hills East Neighborhood Association, recording minutes of our meetings and publishing a monthly newsletter. We all learned about the Oklahoma Standard. I feel welcome, I feel at home, I've discovered what the heck there is for me in Oklahoma City. The years have seen changes, but the neighborhood is still itself. No one has ever tried to take another person's property as their own simply for a better fit. Everyone worked with what the properties legally allowed. The two original houses on the lots at 100 Northwest 22nd Street were torn down to improve the area, but the time taken to do that has taken much longer than anyone expected. And so actually, when we residents on the block saw activity there, we actually saw it as a positive thing. Past conversations between the new owner and the present residents have had discussions which actually left present owners with the feeling that development on the lots might just actually turn out to be a positive thing. Unfortunately, time has shown us that our discussions were misleading. The owner of 100 Northwest 22nd Street wants to cut chunks of land out of abutting properties and claim them for their own, and even surround those claimed spots with a fence. The owner wants to construct a 2-story garage to serve 2 small lots, install a swimming pool, install a retaining wall shorter than the 2-story garage in a very unattractive manner. Wants to install mechanical equipment, its purpose not listed or described. I still feel welcome. I still feel at home. But now someone is attempting to turn what could have been a positive, proactive use of residential property into an unsightly box. The new owner is trying to force the lots to be something they're not. There is the hope that the owners of 100 Northwest 22nd Street understand that they too are welcome on the block, but not by overrunning others' properties as their own, rather as an opportunity to enhance the neighborhood with their presence. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public wish to speak or make statements?
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street. I also own the house at 2215 North Broadway. That's the house immediately to the south of this that faces Broadway, that little tiny house. Just a little bit about the history of the parcel, because this has been a long-term, difficult piece of property that has appeared before the HP Commission repeatedly. Originally, it was platted with 3 lots facing Broadway. Then it was developed with 2 lots facing 22nd Street in about 1920. 2 bungalows, and behind the bungalows were 2 ADUs, okay, and a garage, okay, including the ADU that I own that faces Broadway. Over a period of about 30 years, the owner allowed these properties to go into extreme disrepair, and they were all eventually destroyed by demolition. Not all of them, except for the one I have. Okay, at first it was the houses on the front facing 22nd Street. The roofs caved in, and the city eventually came out and said, you've got to tear them down. And we went one by one. And then we finally got down to the last house on Broadway, the ADU for the corner house. And it remained intact longer because there was a tenant in there, okay? But once the tenant moved, the landlord again stopped maintaining that, and that roof caved in, okay? At that point in time, the HP Commission basically told the landlord, you've done this 3 times in a row. This is your 4th time you've allowed a historic structure roof to cave in for lack of maintenance. And basically, the property owner came to the neighborhood and said, the city's given me a horrible time. Those people on the HP Commission hate me, and I've got to get rid of this problem, okay, because they're not going to ever let me tear down this property. And of course, what he wanted to do was put commercial property in there. It's in the HP district. It was zoned single family. At the time, I was president of the Neighborhood Association, which was at the time was Heritage Hills East. The Neighborhood Association had no money, okay? And so I came to the owner. Well, first of all, the man who let the property deteriorate sold the whole thing to somebody else. And he wanted to tear it down, and the city said no. HP Commission said no. So I came to him, he came to me and he said, find me a buyer. We tried everywhere, nobody would buy it, so I ended up buying it to preserve the last historic structure on the piece of property. The idea was to keep that corner in the HP district. Otherwise, it was going to go commercial, or they were to try and take it commercial, and we would have a fight on our hands to preserve the Heritage Hills East Historic Preservation District. And so that's how this all ended up. And that remains, ever since then, that was 12 years ago, okay? And I reached an agreement with staff at that point in time. I said, I don't have time to restore this house. It's in horrible condition. The roof's caved in. It's all eaten up with termites, and the floors caved in. And they said, restore the outside, make it look decent, and you have as much time as you want to do the inside. I was still working at the time, and so I said, I'll deal with it when I retire. So I came in, I put a new roof on it, got all the windows unboarded, stabilized the structure, and then I started working on restoration a couple years ago when I retired. And I got people over there every day utilizing that, fixing up that house to get it back in shape. Again, it is an 800 square foot house. It is one of the smallest houses in the neighborhood, but it still contributes significantly to the district. That's what we have to remember about historic preservation districts. The houses don't have to be giant to be contributing, all right? So that's where we came in on this. Now, when I bought the property, the sewer line goes underneath the alley, okay, the sanitary sewer. There is no sewer line next to that little greenhouse. So when I bought the property, I told the property owner at the time, I want the entire originally platted lot that goes from Broadway all the way back to the sewer line, okay? Because I have to have access to a sanitary sewer. I'm not going to have to try and get an easement from somebody for a sewer, all right? And so he sold me the entire 50-foot lot. So basically, I bought the back 50 foot of 2 houses. All right. Now, at that time, again, there's a small driveway on Broadway that services the house I have. There's a pad still existing, a foundation pad in the back, because when they tore the house down, they didn't take out the foundation. That is serviced by the alley. Okay. In other words, it's a shared driveway with the people that are coming in. They are not really interested in me using that driveway, although I believe if you look at the plat, I do have the right to use that. It says any owner who owns property adjacent to the alley has the right to access the alley to get to their property. That's how the plat is written. But again, plats are enforced not by the city. Plats are enforced by the courts. Okay. The actual plat for this piece of property says that all the buildings on 22nd Street, that face 22nd Street, shall be set back 25 foot. Okay. The applicant is not proposing setting them back by 25 foot. And when the SPUD came up, the neighborhood went ahead and said, we will not push to enforce that plat because we are desperate to get a piece of residential property in there. Okay. It's also zoned R1 HP. And this is not R1, okay? Well, there is a R1 portion if they split the lot, but there are 6 units on this property. We worked out a deal so that they could put more density here, all right? But again, the actual plat restriction is 25 foot back from 22nd Street, 10 foot back from Broadway, all right? And if any property owner, you don't have to be the neighborhood association to enforce a plat. Any property owner could enforce a plat. Mrs. Pemberton, who lives right next door and whose family put the plats on the property in 1910, could easily enforce the plat in court. All right? So we're trying to work something out with the property owner to make a residential corner here. We don't want retail. We don't want a gas station. Okay, this is in the historic district. We're trying to work that through. But at the same time, we have to be able to preserve our rights going forward. And we don't want a massive structure that towers over the neighborhood and makes the houses, I mean, I've got a little house next door. I mean, my roof is not more than 15 foot tall. These are all going to be 35 foot tall. They're going to be very obvious. And they're not setting things back on Broadway like they should. I don't want to have a little tiny house, surrounded by giant houses. And I think Mrs. Pemberton's concerns are very valid too. Including the fact that they're fencing off her parking in the front. She has one spot in the front that she uses, and that should not be allowed to be fenced off. In fact, there should be no fences more than 40% in front of the line. You don't put fences in front yards in the historic district. We've never allowed that. Okay, so those things have got to be addressed. I think there's enough additional work needed here that we concur as a neighborhood that a continuance is the most prudent way to go at this point in time. And then we all need to meet together further, but give them some guidance on what you want, okay, so that their architects can come up with some solutions. But we need to have a little more time to work on this, and it's not appropriate to make a decision today. Thank you.
I don't think anybody was planning to make a decision today. I I don't really even want to get into the nuances of the fences and stuff until we get generally the site plan of the buildings and the things right. I mean, I think there's some bigger issues that we need to work through before we start getting into those little things. I do think that you provided a little bit of clarity, because what I was trying to ask earlier, the building that's below the red pinpoint is the one that you own. Is that correct? Great. Well, nope. Yes, you may, but may I finish my comments, please? So below the red pinpoint, that is the home that you own now. Okay, so the plat and the parcels that show 100 and 108, that little dwelling that's on the south portion is likely it on the plat. So you carved off the back 50 foot of what was originally the parcel, correct? I don't know if you can go now to the plat.
The plat
to
has
the
3
Sanborn
lots.
maps.
The plat had 3 lots facing Broadway, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I bought the third, the further one to the
Okay.
south. But as it was built in 1920, they built 2 houses on 3 lots facing 22nd Street. So it was very confused in terms of the usage. And they were set back 25 feet because the plat says if you're facing 22nd, you're set back 25 foot like the rest of the houses on 22nd. And so it matched 22nd Street. And in fact, on the other side of the street, the houses are set back 25 foot, even though a couple of them at the very end have now been used for commercial purposes. Okay, and so that's a little confusing as well. Again, this is why this is such a difficult piece of property.
Go down on the Sanborn map to like the 1949 one.
So, yeah, so what I was going to show you real quick, you can see the 1, 2, 3 there
Yes.
on the Sanborn map.
Yeah.
That's lot 1, lot 2, lot 3 that would have run east-west.
Okay.
And then when you go down to where it's been
Yeah.
more fully developed, that dwelling there at the far bottom corner with the 2215, 2213, that is the remaining house.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's lot
280
3, and what they have is lots 1 and 2, and then you
Okay.
can see the alley to the side.
And I have lot 3, and I own the only building left on lot 3 is the one closest to Broadway. The rest were torn down, but
That
they were
brings
2
clarity
ADUs.
for me, because I was thinking that the existing one was the one to the south, the other before. So now this does look like before when I saw 1, 2, 3, 4 dwellings and 3 autos. I thought that was exactly what they're proposing in the current configuration. But now that I know that really 2 of those dwellings and the auto is actually on one of Mr. Ice's properties, then it's a little bit, okay.
So real quick, I want to show, sorry, do you have?
Just a really fast one. Does the SPUD allow for a 20-foot setback or a 25-foot?
So
Because
the
it's
SPUD
proposed at 20 feet.
the SPUD actually allows 10. And
Even as approved? Because I do remember that discussion about
they, so there was an agreement through the negotiation of the SPUD that the westernmost properties would be set back 20, and then the one on the corner would be 10.
So 20, not 25.
So, right,
Because they are at 20.
right.
Okay.
Cross one thing off my list.
And what I will say is there's been lots of discussion and comments from neighbors, discussion between staff and the applicant about the alley and about property lines and all of that. I think it would be, I don't think it's worth the commission spending a lot of time worrying about that today. That is all stuff that we will get worked out with Development Center, with subdivision and zoning, with the property owner and the documentation they have of where the property lines are, us debating where the pins are and what can and can't go in the alley today is probably not a great use of our time.
I think we just need more design comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think where we are is like, I hear the neighborhood comments loud and clear, but the SPUD was approved to accommodate something like this. So I think what we're going for is a happy medium of what the SPUD allows within, what would make us happy from a design standpoint, from a neighborhood and a commission, hopefully. And I don't know what that is right now, because I do think that, my comments earlier on Holly's SPUD in Jefferson Park were that trying to mimic a craftsman in a large scale way to, appear to replicate design components felt really out of sync to me as well. So I don't know what the answer is there. I do agree that we're really at the design stage and we have to accept that what has been allowed on this parcel is multiple dwellings under the guidelines of the SPUD. A question for the applicant, am I understanding correctly that there's just, the swimming pool is just one 6 by 6 foot pool at the rear of the single family? Okay. All right, well, let's talk about design. Commissioners, what you got?
I think now better understanding the plats and the Sanborn maps, I mean, this does seem like I still have an issue with the 22nd Street facades not all perfectly lining up. I realize that would require you to probably shift the northeast corner back a little bit, then you wouldn't get all your parking. It does seem like there's an excessive amount of units on these two parcels. I understand the concern about the height, but I also know in Heritage Hills East, there's a lot of more commercial style residential development that occurs, and there's literally a small house right next to it. I think like 16th and Broadway, it exists. There's a lot more of that that does exist. So I think there could be some circumstances that makes it more appropriate in Heritage Hills East than other places, perhaps.
Especially facing Broadway.
With facing Broadway, with the fire department right there. It is definitely has much more commercial feel. Those are my general high-level comments.
We've got half facing Broadway, right, and half facing 22nd.
Finish public comments.
I don't think we did. I think we have more public comments. I just felt like we were getting a little, like it was like getting unmanageable to make sure and circle back on everything. Go ahead if there's something you'd like to add.
No, I want to say that just with our proposal, we are trying to be very sensitive to the existing street and how it does sort of at that point abruptly change to commercial. And right across from it is that sort of like strip band of commercial, and it's very close to the adjacent site. So we want to be good neighbors. We definitely want to be able to speak to the existing street and speak to the historic properties of the community, of the houses around it. And we're working on that, and we want to keep that an open dialogue for sure.
Have you been able to communicate with the Neighborhood Design Review Committee at all?
He just met with them.
Okay.
But we do want to have more of an open dialogue for sure.
Let's move on to the rest of the public comments and see where we can get with this today. Welcome back. Would you state your name again, just to
Could we try to keep to our 3-minute limit since we're approaching 5?
Sure.
And that was the vacuum cleaner, not the fire side. So.
Oh, vacuum cleaner, okay.
It'll be short. We have met with the owners a couple of different times over the last couple of years, and we do want to kind of close up that end of the street to kind of complete that street, hopefully. We totally agree that this cake's not baked. Not wild about the Tudor-esque look, not wild about the height, not wild about it's a lot of units on not very much room, and it just doesn't breathe. You know, this is what I do for a living. You all know that. We just did a SPUD in Paseo just a few blocks from here, and we tried to find the tallest building within a block or so of our site, which in this instance would be the fourplex that Stephen Kovash owns at the corner of 22nd and Robinson on the northwest corner. And I tried to eyeball it, and I think we've still probably got a height disparity of 6 or 7 feet, but I think a lot of it is based on the Tudor and could be managed differently to minimize it. The case earlier today in Jefferson Park, it looked like a big old loaf of bread landed on top of that little duplex. It just doesn't, you know, but I'm sure the design team can come up with options. A little distressed about the lack of windows. On some of the sides, there's only 2 or 3 windows. We love our windows, so I think we could work on that quite a bit, but I just don't, and we talked a little bit on Sunday, if there was time to meet with you all while you're in town. I don't know how long you're here, but we're happy to try to visit some more so we can work through some of this without taking up a lot of time until it's a little farther along. So whatever guidance you'd like to give, I was just trying to give you some high points of things that we've noticed in just the beginning stages.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, to kind of echo the window statement, if I were to, without diving into really specific notions about the design, it's just to be more mindful about the community spirit, windows, porches, setbacks, like that's what creates this organic open space where people are out walking and conversating with one another and feeling like they're all related to one another. So, you know, from a design standpoint, I would say just be really mindful of those components because they're probably the most important components in this neighborhood. And I think we have another public speaker, a return public speaker.
One quick note, we're so concerned about the vision, about how it looks, the porches, the glass. My little house is one of the smaller in the area. It's a complete constant renovation with an old house, which is fine with me, but I still have the original 1925 glass in my windows. I have 23 windows, and right down to the look of the windows, it's different. When you stand and look at a piece of glass and a piece of art glass, which is what it's called now, the look is different. What you see is different. So it's a consideration for me. Thank you.
My few design comments, like I have no issue with, you know, creating something that's more modern, especially with multifamily. You know, you're not, I think that was our issue with the Jefferson Park one, a multifamily that's like craftsman or bungalow style. It just didn't feel quite right, and I don't necessarily think that that's right here. But I do think that there are very easy incorporations to make it feel a little bit more, you know, contextual within the neighborhood, like cast stone elements and sills, and instead of a brick veil for your porch railing, you know, a cast iron or a painted wood. You know, look at your window sizes and how you mold them together. I think there's quite a few things there that are fairly easy tweaks that will make it feel more contextual to the neighborhood. And I do agree with, you know, studying the roof pitch a little bit, because these are pretty big, pretty tall. So I think just try to be mindful of some of the things like that and get closer to where we want to be.
We haven't even discussed lot coverage ratio.
I was just about to ask, how many units were allowed for in the SPUD? And what was the lot cover? I'm sure they're within it because, you know, they've put a lot of work into this, but I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
The lot coverage. Minimum open space is 25% open space, meaning space with no structures or impermeable paving. They were allowed single family, 3 and 4 family, and 2 family residential with a maximum of 6 dwelling units permitted.
So they're within all of
Within
okay.
all of that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so Cassie, did you have specific questions there about lot coverage or parking?
No, I
or-
just want to make sure that that's on the radar. I think just because SPUD states certain things doesn't mean it's necessarily the correct solution in this scenario. I think, like the chairwoman said, you know, paying attention to the context of the neighborhood, the setbacks of the existing homes, the porches, the stoops, are all important. So I would just encourage you to consider those things as well.
Any questions for us while we're up here giving feedback? Anything that you're not understanding about the process or where we're trying to take this or next steps?
No, I think for us personally as the architects, I think that this has been very, very helpful. We definitely, will be reaching out, Katie, to further some discussion on, especially specifically that lot line condition. But yes, especially, even this is, admittedly, mine and my colleagues' first trip to Oklahoma City. So we did drive around today, and that was very, very helpful. And yeah, like you were saying, exactly, like the sills and the reeds of the railings and things like that. These are things that we want to also discuss with our client and study, because it is a delicate balance. Like we can't replicate what's next door, and then also create multifamily housing. So there is this balance that has to happen, and it's going to take a couple of iterations, I think, to get there. But yes, we definitely want to be more sensitive to the existing context for sure.
I appreciate that. I think that's great. One thing that you probably did today, but if you didn't, I mean, the neighborhood has several entry points, and you might find a lot of examples of transitional architecture that, has some of it new, some of it existing, but, it's not just that one corner that's kind of this weird problem as you come and go from the neighborhood. So from Mesta and Heritage, there's several good examples of things that kind of phase in.
That would be great. Katie, could we reach out to you for those corners?
Yeah.
That would be great to look at.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any more public comments or anybody else wishing to speak on this? Commissioners,
I'm assuming you would like a continuance until May 6th, or are you wanting to be back April?
You wanting to have it all in 6 days, or?
Okay. With that, I will make a motion to continue HPCA 26000008 to the May 6th meeting.
Second.
All right, y'all can vote in PrimeGov. Okay, we'll see you in May.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your stay. Oh. Okay. Gosh, where even are we?
BOA.
All right.
Other business.
Yes, other business. BOA 16147.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. This is at 717 Northwest 28th Street, Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Libby Ross for Smith Holdings LLC for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, provide a recommendation to Board of Adjustment regarding an application for a special exception to allow for home sharing elective. Folks, if you don't mind visiting in the lobby, just because it makes it really hard for everybody else to hear in here. This is a home share that you all saw last month, and we kind of bumped it to, we actually lost quorum, so we didn't take action on it, so it's on our agenda today. The work that they were doing to the house when we got the home share application was on your consent docket today, if you didn't notice. So they're good to go as far as having a certificate of appropriateness for the work that they did, and we've recommended approval for the home share. We did have comments from a neighbor expressing some concern about the number of home shares, that sort of thing. There is a limit on the number of home shares on a given block now because of the recently passed revisions to the home sharing ordinance. So that does create some controls. They are, our understanding is that they're within that limit, and if they're not, they won't be able to go forward.
Cool. Okay. There being no applicant present, any public comments on this? Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval on BOA 16147.
Second.
Okay. That motion carries. All right.
And Molly stepped out, so she's abstained, I guess, or recused at this moment.
Okay. Is she gone
She,
permanently?
I think she had to step out just
Okay.
briefly. Yeah, her stuff's still here, so she's still here.
She might mess around and get elected chair.
When you leave the room, you're up for.
Okay, we don't have a chairperson anymore. So we need to elect a new chair and a new vice chair. I am here nor there on this.
You want to start with the chair? And I second that.
How long is this chair term?
We're
Serious
actually supposed to
question.
elect chair and vice chair every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I elect Sarah
I'll
for
do
as
that
long
for a
as
year.
she, no, as long as she serves on the committee, she can.
Don't make
I
that a
think we
condition.
had a motion for Sarah already from Caitlin.
And I'll second that. Yeah.
Going to be here until I die. Otherwise, there's going to be 4 of you.
Vice chair.
I nominate Patrick.
You want to do vice chair?
I feel like this is like truth or dare. Like, it's like
I don't
some sort
know,
of a
Molly's
threat.
not here, so. Or maybe this is a way we could get some other commissioners to actually show up.
Yeah, true.
That was on public comment, sorry.
Oh, I can't.
I'll
Yeah, second this motion. You get to move to the middle, Patrick.
You can
True.
seat.
that means I get to go back to my chair.
We can share the gavel.
Yeah, can we switch around? I can't ever see it.
Yeah, we can rotate everyone.
Okay, communications and reports.
Lots of administrative approvals, nothing to report particularly. Always feel free to reach out to staff if you see something on that list and you have a question. No withdrawals, 1 administrative closing, nothing from City Council or Board of Adjustment or Planning Commission to report. Municipal Councilor? Nothing.
Nothing but questions. Okay, next meeting dates.
Our next regularly scheduled meeting is Wednesday, April 1st. New applications were to be received by yesterday, Tuesday, March 3rd. And new information for that next meeting is due next Tuesday, March 10th. And then our next regularly scheduled workshop is Wednesday, April 8th. So we'll check with everybody on quorum for that. And I think we also sent out a poll for guidelines subcommittee as well. So we'll get all those locked down with everybody.
Wednesday, April 8th, and I'm so sorry, what time did you say?
8:30 a.m.
I think I have that on my calendar, but I don't know. Okay, items from commissioners.
Are we going to get new commissioners?
It was time for somebody to ask again.
Our monthly question?
It is my understanding that it is being worked on, and I'll let you know as soon as I know.
It's being worked on for 2 years.
Okay, any citizens to be heard? Okay, there being none, we are adjourned.